I'd like to call to order this meeting, please. Thank you. Good evening. It's 6 p.m., Tuesday, August 26th, and this is a legislative budget hearing, Champaign County Board. Can I please have a roll call?
Jay. Here. Kibler. Langenheim. Here. Maxwell. McGuire. Present. Michaels. Here. Mitchell. Here. Petrie. Here. Quisenberry. Richards. Rosales.
Here.
Schrader. Yeah, here. Schwartz. Here. Alex. Here. Berkson. Carter. Cowart. Esri.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Hartke.
Here.
James. Here. Kurtz.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you very much, Beth. I'd like to have a motion for the approval of the agenda addendum, please.
Second.
Geraldo and Aaron. Any changes, discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll start with our budget presentations, and first up is the auditor's office.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My budget this year is quite simple. The majority of our budget, about 97% of it, is salaries. And the changes for this year are simply the increases that were approved by the county board. On the revenue side, we adjusted a little on our accounting fees, and we're estimating that we believe we will generate $128,000 in accounting fees, which is very close to what we've done in past years, a little bit above, actually. The other changes, the nitty-gritty, are in our commodities and services, which is a very small part of our budget. And what I did for this year is I took last year's budget, adjusted it for a 12-month budget, and then attempted to stay underneath that. Overall, we're about $240 below what we were last year when adjusted, about a 1.7% under last year's. The biggest change is in our check printing process, and that's something that we have just started in the last probably 6 weeks. So we're kind of getting into it. And what we've done is we're going from buying the pre-printed checks from Deluxe, which you might buy through your banks and things, to going to a blank check stock that we can print on all 8 of our checking accounts that we have for the county. That way we don't have that extra printing cost. We can put all that information onto the checks and send them out. So we're hoping that as the years progress, we're going to see more savings by doing that. So that's one thing we're starting to do for this year. What I've done within my budget, when we go through and we actually put things in the different lines, I've moved the savings from that over to the professional services line with the intention of working on our web presence for the office, and in working with the Administrative Services Division in IT. Ms. Busey and I have talked about this, and we want to increase the public awareness on budget and finance issues, and we've got some vendors that we'd like to work with, and we're hoping to be able to contribute towards that project. So that's my budget in a nutshell. It's quite simple, honestly, and I'd be glad to talk about it.
All right, let's start with Diane and then Stan.
Just real quick, as a banker, I understand Deluxe is very expensive. However, one of the things I'm wondering if you have reoccurring that maybe you can get that set up on electronic. I mean, nobody really sees checks anymore. Everything's all electronic done. That Check 21 completely got rid of the paper items for the most part. So I didn't know if some of these vendors or people that you're paying on a, consistent basis can just be electronically transferred.
It's something we're working towards. It hasn't happened yet.
Because a lot of the financial institutions offer that.
Yes, it's in the
Okay.
pipeline.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Well, Jay and I still want ours in paper form.
I anxiously await signing yours each month.
I hope so.
I draw a little smiley face there for you.
Your objectives, you talk about your audit of the inventory of real and personal property, and I know part of your big deal when you took office was that you were going to get out more and check those things and do audits. Have you been doing that?
Yeah, well, actually, one of the projects that we worked on this year's the vehicle inventory of the county. Early on this year, it was snow was out there. We got notified about a couple of vehicles that we didn't have in our inventory. Our insurance carrier didn't have it on their inventory, or things just weren't matching up. So we went through and worked very hard on that. So that's one, right off the top of my head, a major one that we worked on. That took quite a large amount of man-hours to work on that.
Because I can almost imagine when changing computers and systems and
Sure.
everything else, that stuff gets lost.
Our fixed asset book that we have a hard copy of the fixed assets. It's easily that large.
Okay, but you are doing it so
Oh,
far, no
absolutely.
major surprises?
No major surprises. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, it's something, in fact, one of my accountants, in the last month, we sent him for special training on fixed asset accounting.
Okay, thank you.
Rachel?
You've been warning us you're going to come and ask for software, and I don't see it. Isn't it a different budget fund?
What we have started doing is Ms. Busey, Mr. Anderson, myself, the IT department, we've started having meetings just to brainstorm, starting to bring these ideas together. We're not anywhere near the point where we need to start asking for funding because we want to know. Basically, we're doing our own needs analysis before going out and asking for other folks to come in. So I don't foresee that being in this budget year, but it's something that we are working on right now.
All right, Chris?
Question, I guess, for you or Deb on that. Who's the ultimate authority on that? Is the accounting system, owned by the administrative services, the treasurer, or the auditor, or some combination thereof?
Well, the accounting system actually falls under the auditor's responsibilities. But, we have an accounting system that was built in-house with in-house programmers over 30 years ago. So when it comes to purchasing it, I think we all view it as more of a global purchase. And certainly it will be an IT project. So how we go about it at that point, we'll see.
But it is technically, it's the auditor's responsibility.
Right.
Okay, I thought that was the case. I just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Patsy?
Hello.
Couple of information questions.
Is your microphone on?
Oh, thank you. I'm on page 2, 34131, and I'm interested, you have jumped up the accounting fees quite a percentage since it's a 12-month budget as compared to the previous 13-month budget. Why do you think you're going to get that much more?
When you look at what happened in 2013 when we came in, the accounting fees are figured at the very end of the year, actually after the close of the budget year. And it's based on the number of transactions, checks that were written on the different accounts that we were allowed to bill. And so when you look at the 2013 amount, where it was 125,000, that's what I looked at when attempting to figure for this year's budget, because I know that we have more transactions than we did in 2013.
Okay, because of workforce?
Correct.
All right.
Well, amongst other things. It's the number of transactions overall is higher.
Okay, my next question is on line 5119. What temp salaries did you have this past year?
On 5119
5119's overtime.
is overtime.
Which one are you looking at,
Yeah,
Patsy?
5115, temp
Five,
salaries and
okay.
wages.
Oh, 5, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong line. It was overtime, excuse me. Sometimes I lose track of the lines, my apologies. I also wanted to know, either from you as the auditor or Ms. Busey, exactly what falls under professional services? Because as I went through the budget, sometimes there's money under professional services, sometimes a little bit, sometimes quite a large amount. So what is this, define this catch-all category for me?
Well, that's really what it is. It's a catch-all
Yeah, I
for
figured
many, I
that
mean, it
out.
could be engineering services, it could be, consultants of some type. In our case, we intend to, we actually have money for our shredding project because we have to shred documents every year, and so we have that money in the shredding line, or in the professional services line. About 500 of that goes just to get rid of old documents that the state has told us that we can destroy that have personal information on it. Like I said, we intend to use that money towards internet development. We'll have to bring someone in perhaps, and so that's what I use my line for.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I'd like a motion to place auditors on file. Max, second, Diane. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Board of Review. Is the Board of Review here? I didn't see anyone for them. She's in her office. What's that? I don't see anybody from the Board of Review here. What? Would you check, JJ, and see if anybody's there? If Stan should be there, because he's coming up too. Let's move from the Board of Review to County Clerk's office. Gordy, we'll push you up.
Good evening. Our budget, our proposed budget for FY15 is relatively speaking very stable, a status quo budget. It will continue our efforts to sort of even out the uneven cycle that we have in election funding, where every even year we know we're going to have 2 elections, and an odd year sometimes we can get away with less than that. For FY15, we are budgeting for an election and a half in anticipation of a citywide primary in the city of Champaign. If we do not have that citywide primary, we'll be able to save money, most significantly on election judges, but there'll be other related expenses that we won't need to spend. We have 4 budgets. Our general court budget is the one where you'll see the vast majority of our revenues and expenditures. We also have an automation fund, which has a relatively small balance, was very nearly empty 3 years ago, and we are slowly trying to build up a balance in the automation fund for larger scale projects. And we have 2 pass-through funds, one for grants and one for vital record surcharges. Like I said, it's a very status quo budget. It's very closely based on what we did in 2013. And if you have any questions about any items in particular, any details in particular, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Stan?
Gordy, under your item 54438, your capital items, does that include any vehicles you have, or do you budget for any vehicles? Because I know you've got, what, 1 van?
We got 1 van. That van was purchased in FY11, if memory serves correctly. So we don't have anything budgeted in there, and I don't believe we budget anymore to replace that on a capital asset basis. We worked with the county administrator to, we used to have a large filing, electronic power file that was a tens of thousands of dollars item. We eliminated that in 2011, and we eliminated the old van that was being capitalized inadequately. And we'll just replace that van eventually when we need to, out of our budget.
I'd like to see something, because I brought this up last night with another department, is, because things like that are going to need replacing, and if you could have a capital, I see you had some there for furnishings. If you could have a line item, because as that stuff comes due, a new van's going to run what, anywhere 20,000 with the trade-in or something like that. It'd be nice to see a line item knowing that you're thinking about it, because if that's an 11, it's going to need replaced probably in about another 3 years.
When I took office in 2011, the previous van had been in service for 13 or 14 years, and over those 13 or 14 years, we'd accumulated somewhere in the neighborhood of $11,000 in capital assets, not nearly enough. And so when we replaced it by using funds that we had saved in other lines. We didn't use the capital asset replacement fund we had built up for the purpose. We instead transferred that to the county administrator and the facilities director for use in capital projects related to Brookins. We needed a new door put in for the early voting room and some things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Gordy, do you use highway department? That's me. Do you use highway department as well for maintenance on your truck as some other departments do?
No, our van is 3 years old and has about 2,700 miles on it.
Well, I was thinking about oil changes and things of that sort.
Oil changes, car washes, yeah.
You do, okay. Patsy?
Microphone, you turned it off.
I have a question related to overtime that you have listed on page 15, which is 5119 line, and then you have overtime listed on page 8 at $3,000. Are they, that one is line 5119.
My page 15 doesn't have any overtime on it.
As is right there in front of you.
Got it. So you're looking at my general corp fund 080022. County,
On the automation.
you're looking at the automation fund?
Yeah, and I was just curious if those numbers ought to be the same or if they are actually correct and different.
Got it. We use the automation fund to supplement the overtime of the programmer analyst, who used to be paid out of our department's automation fund. And several years ago, in agreement with you and with the IT department, we transferred that position to the IT department. The IT department doesn't have money budgeted for overtime for that position, so we've worked out an agreement with the IT department that when she needs to work extra hours on election-related projects or on projects for our office, we cover the overtime expense for that, and we cover it out of our automation fund.
Okay, and then my second question is really just a curiosity question. On page 10, you have projected 16,000 voters prior to Election Day. Is that both the primary and then this November?
Correct.
Okay.
Chris, and then James.
Thanks, Gordy. I notice we're looking at, I notice your fee revenue budget for 2015 is what we project to do for 2014, which is significantly lower than well, 50,000 lower than we thought we'd do in 2014. Any insight on why it's lower? Higher fees leading to lower services, or just lower demand, or?
The FY14 fee projection came from the Bellwether Cost Services Study, so it came from the consultant. And we simply plugged it into the budget. And when Ms. Busey and I were doing our preliminary budget, we looked at it, we sort of went back and forth between whether we thought we could get to the 375 or whether we thought we could get to 325, and we settled on a more conservative number just so that you would know what worst-case scenario was. I think between she and I, we're going to look at this again one more time before it comes to you for final. And when we looked at it in early June, we thought there was still a chance with a busy summer for weddings and birth certificates that it would catch back up to where the projection was eventually.
Okay, I was just curious. It makes sense that the original projection wasn't perfect, so we're just going to take what we get, I
This is
guess.
the first year with the fee increases that were
okay.
approved last year.
Sounds good.
James.
There we go. Got it. Hi, Gordy.
Hi, James.
Thanks for being here. Can you tell me what the capital investment we have in vote counting machines is right now, roughly?
We have 126 M100 tabulators that if we were to buy them today, they would cost us about $6,000, including ballot boxes and all the related accessories per device.
Per device?
So that's $700,000, $750,000. We have an additional $100,000 of DS200s. We have 102, hopefully, functional AutoMark voting assistance terminals. Those are a $6,000 or $7,000 item each. So we're easily
1.2 million?
1.5 million in
Oh,
election
okay.
equipment.
Okay.
And this election equipment was all purchased, if you'll remember, with federal grant funds in 2004, 2005, and 2006. And I think I've shared with you that the biggest concern that I have in terms of the administration of our office is every jurisdiction in America bought election equipment at the same time. It is all going to die at the same time. And the federal government, the Election Assistance Commission, the partisan breakdown in Washington is so severe that the President and the United States Senate cannot agree to appoint commissioners to the Election Assistance Commission, let alone agree how to appropriate funds to continue to provide money to election jurisdictions to modernize their equipment. So when this equipment all starts to die, and it has a 20-year shelf life, and we're in year 10, I suspect local jurisdictions are going to be on their own, and that's one of the reasons why we've tried to plan for that.
Who says it has a 20-year shelf life?
The manufacturer.
Okay.
So that may be optimistic.
Yeah. The, and 670-022 is the fund that would buy that equipment if we needed new equipment or if we were cycling new equipment in?
If we can, as you'll recall, at the end of last year, we used a combination of funds to acquire 12 sort of latest and greatest optical scan tabulators called DS200s. We did that in part because we wanted to offer enhanced service for our early voting locations. We also did it with the mindset of eventually if our M100s, our 10-year-old machines start dying, we can start to phase in these newer machines. We used a combination of credits from the manufacturer for unused equipment that we had returned. We used budgetary savings from our general corp fund, and we used grant funds. We did not have to dip into our automation fund to buy any of those 12 DS200s last year.
And there's a lot of these out there in the country, right? So if they start to have a problem, we may not be the ones who find out over time.
Correct, but
So-
you would also think that because there are so many of them out there that we wouldn't have a problem getting parts or potentially
Okay.
locating spare machines, in jurisdictions where they don't use as many. For example, Sangamon County uses the same equipment that we do, When they re-precincted in 2011, they dropped their number of precincts by almost 40%. But the county clerk in Sangamon County would not entertain the thought of selling us any surplus machines. He's holding on to them because as his machines die,
Yeah.
he's going to part his old ones out and try and keep the remaining ones alive, zombie style, as long as he can.
Okay, so it's fair to say that this is a concern that we have about 8 to 10 years to address.
Yes, and it's a concern that we've shared as individual county clerks and as a statewide association of county clerks with the State Board of Elections and with the legislature. But it's not as if the legislature has a spare $250 million or $300 million laying around to buy new equipment for the entire state of Illinois.
Okay, thank you.
And as you say, 8 to 10 years, James, sounds optimistic when it comes.
Well, that's when it would be critical. I mean,
Yeah.
we may not have to do something about it this year, but
Right.
we have to start stepping into that expectation.
And we don't want anyone to panic. We're planning for it now with the idea of when this stuff starts to die, if the rest of the world is left holding the bag, hopefully in Champaign County, we'll be able to scrape by with something. So, excuse me.
Okay. We have any other questions for Gordy at this point? No? Then I'd like to have a motion to place the report on file. So moved by Ralph, second by Geraldo. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Gordy.
Thank you and good night.
Let's move back to the Board of Review. I see our chair there.
Sorry, I thought the meeting started at 6:30. Hi. Basically, ours is staying pretty much the same. There's 3 of us, and really, we didn't have any big increases in anything at this point. We moved a few items around a little bit. We added a little bit more for gasoline because we are viewing more properties, and takes a little bit more for that. We'll be getting new computers this next year, and I think we're going to need a different vehicle to ride around in. Our car is having lots of problems, and I think Deb said she's going to try and get us a different vehicle for the next year. We have 3 people on the Board of Review. Our total expenditures are budgeted at $125,146. Most of that is, the largest amount is salary. If you look at page 6, it shows our performance indicators for the last 2 years, and it looks like this year our numbers may be a little bit less. Last year we had 1,700 complaints, and unless we have a big rush at the end, we should have a few less than that this year. So, does anybody have any questions?
James?
You said you were planning to buy new computer equipment this year?
No, we're scheduled to get new computers this year.
If I could just remind the board, you'll be going through it tomorrow night, but for the general corporate fund departments who you are hearing from tonight, with the exception of the circuit court and circuit clerk and county clerk, all of their technology, all of their vehicles are scheduled and replaced through the capital asset replacement fund. So you won't see it in their budgets, you'll see it tomorrow night in the capital asset replacement fund budget.
Do they pay a fee into that?
No, because it's funded by the general corporate fund, which also funds all of these department budgets.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Patsy?
Do Board of Review members, are they required to do conferences and training?
Are we required to what?
To attend conferences and training?
We're required to keep our licenses up to date.
Okay.
We're all 3 appraisers,
Okay.
and we do continuing education classes
All
on a
right.
regular basis.
And then I'm interested on page 6, a projection of quite an increase in appeals on the property taxes from 15 to 40. Do you really think that is going to be happening? It's under your performance indicators?
That's an estimate. That's PTAB. That's if someone comes in and they file, like say a business comes in and they file a complaint and they don't have an appraisal
or like a big corporate business, they don't have an appraisal, then we require appraisals for corporations, for big corporate things. They might appeal directly to the state, and those are P-tabs. And sometimes those take 2 or 3 years, sometimes 4 years to settle. So that's a number that's kind of up in the air.
Okay.
That's just a very rough estimate.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris?
I guess given the Carl situation and the substantial increase in property tax bills in the city of Urbana this year, I'm wondering if we're going to see some fallout from that in the form of complaints. Not that you can do anything about the Carl issue, but that that may be the impetus for people to say, wow, I wonder if I'm
You know, we really thought
overassessed.
that we would see a lot more people from Urbana coming in and complaining, but almost everyone that's come in have been people with sales. There's been a few that have come in and said, my taxes are just too high. You know, it's gone up so much, it's just too high. And most of them, you know, do realize that it's a direct reflection of the Carl situation, and they just don't know what they can do about it. And we tell them, well, we're here to try and help you and get a fair market value for your property. We'll take a look at it. But it really hasn't been a big jump like we thought we might have anticipated, surprisingly, unless they all come in the next week.
Yeah,
They
we'll
have
see.
until September 10th.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, motion to place on file? So moved, Stan. Second, Aaron. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I apologize again for being late.
Recorder.
Good evening. Everything is pretty stable in my budget for next year. As I put in my notes, the home prices have risen an average less than 1% this past year. The market has been very slow still, even though realtors will tell you differently, and they may see it differently than what we see it. Some of the other changes in our budget we have been collecting a rental housing support fund fee, which is $10 per document, $9 of which goes to the state, $1 of which is kept here in the county. There's a lawsuit from Lake County, Illinois, declaring that that's unconstitutional. So those funds right now are being held in escrow here in the county until that lawsuit is resolved. So we are still collecting the fee. We're just not sending it off to the state at this point. So that may be a reason why some of the numbers look differently. As far as automation goes, everything is pretty stable there as well. As you can see, we're running at a slight deficit in automation. Our automation fund is funded by a $3 per document automation fee, and we get, I believe, 50 cents per document from the GIS fee, and 50 cents from the rental housing support program fee. Work this year has been kind of up and down. We've had times where we're extremely busy and then times when we're extremely slow. And just when I think that it's slowed down, we get slammed again. So I just don't know of any way to adequately predict what next year is going to do. So I try to be as conservative with my numbers as possible. Any questions?
Patsy?
Hi,
Hi,
Patsy.
how are you? Thank you
Good,
for
thanks.
coming. Would you just describe for all of us a little bit more about this rental housing support fee? I mean, I understand what you just explained, but can you give a little background?
Sure. It came into existence about 4 or 5 years ago, and what it was an initiative by Cook County to develop a way in which to subsidize rental housing for low-income families. So what the bill says is that $10 will be collected from each land-related document. that's filed in the recorder's office. So that includes probably about 97% of our documents. It's all the deeds, all the mortgages, all the assignments, all the releases. About the only things that it doesn't cover are power of attorneys, soldiers' discharges, and a couple other things that we don't record very often. In Lake County, a gentleman filed a lawsuit claiming that it was unconstitutional to charge the $10. And so that's been kind of rattling around for about 2 years now, but it's only been within the past 8 months or so that we've been directed to withhold sending the state funds in. And some of that money does come back to Champaign County, not a lot of it. It's kind of disproportionate. Cook County gets the biggest share. The collar counties get a lot of it, and then I believe it's around 15% that's spread throughout the rest of the state.
Okay,
So,
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Cook County, love that county.
Yeah, you gotta love them.
Yeah, I love them. Any other questions for Barb? All right. Can I place her report on file, please? Motion by Chris, second by Diane. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on. Supervisor of assessments.
Good evening. Our budget's pretty meager. When we take out personnel, and which I get just a quick overview of the office, we're dealing with one less employee than we had 5 years ago, dealing with a lot more parcels, dealing with a lot more exemptions, new legislation. The people in the office are excellent. Between the group, we probably have about 80 years of experience in the assessment world. They've really stepped up to the plate in that regard. Our budget, we're about almost where we were 2 years ago, I believe. I think every year we've had a little bit of a surplus at the end. Our budget, if you take personnel, wages, salaries out of it, we have to publish so much in the paper every year. That's about another 25 grand. If you take those two items out of our budget, we have about $10,000 of discretionary spending that can be moved around. We do the best we can with it.
Any questions for Supervisor of Assessments? Patsy?
Hi, Stan.
Hi, Patsy.
I'm curious, page 25, line 33570, state salary reimbursement at 36,000. And I've noticed on other budgets, there is state salary reimbursement, but not quite as high as this. Could you explain why you're so lucky and you get more?
I don't have a clue why I'm so lucky. That's how the law is written.
Okay.
If we keep our numbers within certain parameters, the county's reimbursed 50% of the salary.
Okay, thank you. So it's statute.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
State statute, yes. Any other questions for Stan? Okay, motion to place on file? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. I heard a mumble. Josh, okay, second, Stan. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Stan.
Thanks, folks.
Good evening. I'm responsible for 4 budgets. I have a general corp budget, an automation fund budget, responsible for the working cash fund, and also a property interest fee fund, which is related to tax sales. The general corp fund budget, my discretionary spending is $247, which is the same as it's been for the last 4 years. When I first took office in 1998-99, my expenditure budget, other than salaries, was $28,000. So we've stayed the same. We do what the majority, of course, of that 16,000 is involved with the product, which is what I call the tax bills themselves, the envelopes themselves, those types of things, is the vast majority of it. The revenue side on the general corporate budget is about 715,000, the vast majority of that being late charges, about 650,000. For the last 5 years, we've averaged 645,000 in collections. So that's, not too much to explain, I guess. Do you want me to go on to individual budgets, or would you want to stop here and talk about general corp first?
Well, I don't see any questions.
Yeah,
Keep going.
let's go
Dan.
ahead with the automation. It's based on, our office gets $10 for every tax sale item. Last year, we had about 800, a little over 800 tax sale items. Previous year, we were up to 1,100, so I was a little surprised to see it go down. But out of that, I tried to, when I said with the general corp budget the expenditure went from 28 down to 16, a lot of it's because I've tried to move as much as possible that the law allows out of general corporate budget and into my automation fund. That takes care of all of our computer needs and those types of things. So if there's any questions about that, I'd be glad to answer them.
I just am kind of curious here. It seems like there's still a lot of properties being maybe abandoned, foreclosed, or whatever. I would think that there would be more in that tax sale line item than there is. Or do you think it's kind of leveled off from what's happened before?
Well, it was going up
Yeah.
every year for 4 or 5 years, and I thought that trend would continue, all of a sudden it dropped back down.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the question that Chris had about Carl, the effective Carl. Would I have more people complaining to me? I haven't heard any.
Sure.
It's been, maybe the media's done a good job of explaining it, and I'm not sure what the reason is, but I don't particularly see a correlation between foreclosures and tax sale items. A lot of people would rather make sure that their taxes get paid, and there's a lending institution that might take over. So I don't really look at the correlation between those two very often.
If I can ask another one. I know you have a very low delinquency rate. How is that looking for delinquent on
The
the
last
taxes?
16 years, I think our average collection rate, if that's what you're asking
Still
about.
staying the same?
Yeah,
Still staying calm?
99.6.
Okay.
I think last year's collection for the year itself was 99.98,
Okay,
which is virtually everything except for
Right.
bankruptcies.
right.
Any other questions so far? Go ahead, Dan, continue.
The other two budgets, working cash, $377,000 that at one time, was a levy within our general corporate fund, and it's been many years since that we've had any levy on that, so we just keep $377,000, and we just keep it liquid just in case we could use it to borrow if some borrowing situation came up for general corp or something like that, but it hasn't been the case in recent years. So there's really nothing in that fund that we transfer out to whatever interest earnings there are, which is rather pathetic at best anyway. And the last budget that I take care of is a property tax interest fee budget, and that is for every tax sale item, we charge $60. And once that accumulates the funds over 100,000, everything above 100,000 goes to the general corporate fund. It started with a request from Mrs. Busey several years ago to look and see if there's any way to find revenue sources. Well, that was a fee we were not charging, and it's turned out to be a really good, stable 60 to 80,000 every year that goes to general corp. So it's been a good deal, and so it's just a straight everything above. We've already got to the 100,000, so every year whatever we make, we turn that back over to general corp. So that's what you see there, and I've reduced it from 60 or 70,000 down to 55 because of the lesser number of tax sale items.
Okay, any other questions for Dan? John? I saw the hand moving. I'm ready to move. Okay. All right. Like a motion to place on file, please. Somebody? John? Second? Chris? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Let's move on to planning and zoning.
Good evening.
Good evening, John.
Planning and zoning is a fairly small budget. About 3/4 of it is personnel. That was actually low for FY14 at 71%, and in FY15 it'll be up near 75% again. Our revenues offset only about 12% of the costs. Actually, the revenues have done so well in FY14 that should creep up to 13% this year, but it's still a very small amount. Revenues are up this year because permitting has been up. It's a 13-month fiscal year, but it's also been up just across the board. Permitting has been real busy. As far as costs, you saw our 78% increase in gas and oil. That's because the interns that you authorized last year have been out on the road almost full-time. We should end this year with resolving over 200 cases, which will be the first year that we've really made big progress in reducing the backlog. Unfortunately, we're already past the easy cases, and now we're into the cases where we have to write letters and follow up on those letters, and the interns are helping us with that. They've also made a huge increase in our compliance inspections. This year, we're going to do far more compliance inspections than last year, thanks to the interns. A new cost that we have for FY 2015 is training to enforce the erosion and sedimentation controls that should be in place by the end of this year. And so for FY 2015, I've put in costs for 2 of our staff members to take 3 days of training here locally. IDOT offers a great program at the some transportation center on campus, and it really is good training. We're lucky to have that locally, and we plan to get the benefit of that in FY 15. Any questions?
Oh, Chris?
How do you find your interns?
The county board approved those. It's a small increase in the personnel.
No, I know. How do you find, I say find, not fund, find.
Well, actually, that was not easy. I did not find interns until this summer. We found an intern who, to begin with, was free. The U of I has a program like that. And Rita Black, who always has a great stable of interns, has told me, once you find one good intern, you can use that intern to find other good interns, and she's exactly right.
Sounds like your experience has been similar to my own. Thank you.
Yeah, I've talked with both those young ladies. They seem to be enjoying what they're doing immensely, and you seem to be very happy with them.
It's kind of freaky how much they enjoy it, but they really do, and it's working out wonderful. Freaky. I never met an urban planning student that enjoyed enforcement, but they have.
They really do.
I kept my promise to them. At Thursday night CBA meeting, they each have a memo going to the zoning board, so they're getting a full round experience.
That's great, John. Thanks. Big help. Patsy, go ahead.
I'm glad to see an amount in training for the folks, but it's very dedicated. And you have had an increase in income from your fees. I would like to see a small amount of that moved over to training so people can consider actually attending conferences and not training solely dedicated to a particular aspect. I'm certainly for that, but I would like to see some more breadth, and I'm consistent. I've said this now. This is the 4th year, so let's hope this can happen.
All right, any other questions for John? All right, a motion to place on file, please. Jim and Aaron, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, John. Have a great evening. Let's move to Veterans Assistant Commission. Brad.
Good evening. My budget really hadn't changed that much. Actually, if you look at it, it looks like it's going down. A lot of that was due to donations that happened late in 2013 that I did not get this year, or, I can't project it. It's too inconsistent. So I'll be glad to answer Any questions?
Well, first,
Brad, you have a program change request. You
Yes,
wanna
I do have a
explain?
program change.
You want to explain that?
Program change request. I have submitted a program change request for $4,000 per year. And what that will do, because we had to make many changes. The first year this program went about, it was just a walk-in basis. Well, by word of mouth, now it's there. And there's a lot of people showing up. And with this $4,000 increase, that will allow me to help about 2.5 more veterans per year. So,
any other questions? Any questions? We'll start with Chris.
I read in the News Gazette, I think it was the News Gazette recently, about an effort to start a VAC in one of the neighboring counties. Was it
Ford
Ford or
County,
Iroquois? It was
yeah.
Ford. And they mentioned that that would require or they were seeking a property tax levy for that. Can anybody sort of explain to me how this works and why that wasn't either a discussion or an option here in Champaign County?
There is an allowance for a property tax levy to support veterans, and it would have to go to the voters. And the county board, when it established the Veterans Assistance Commission budget with the Veterans Assistance Commission, which is a separate body, determined not to do that, but to simply fund it this way. It's something that this board could consider putting to the voters at any time.
Is it something that could be put on the ballot through citizen action, or would it require county board action?
I believe it can be put on the ballot both ways, but I don't remember the requirements for petitions.
Okay, because it's something that we, I mean, I know when we got into this, we felt like, hey, this is a pilot, let's put some money, some county money into this as required by the state and see how this goes. But I think we may, I mean, given the demand that these guys are seeing, it may be something that we want to look at alternate funding sources or additional funding sources down the road. I mean, I can't say in polite company how I feel about the fact that the county is having to take care of our veterans instead of the federal government taking care of our veterans. But given that it has fallen on us to take care of these guys who are falling through the cracks otherwise, we may want to consider future sources of more funding for this program.
Any other questions? Patsy was second, then Diane, then Stan.
yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
How does your budget for this county compare to like counties, say McLean or?
I only know about DuPage because they're basically our size.
Okay.
And also Macon County, and they're relatively the same. Now, some of them, because of that tax increase, their budget is a little bit higher.
Okay. And then my second question, which I actually asked last night of the Developmental Disabilities Board and that budget, and now that there's discussion about increasing your budget, do you have some criteria to make certain that we're servicing the people who actually live in Champaign County?
Yes, ma'am.
You do?
I turned away a gentleman last month. He's actually living in Champaign for the 90-day requirement, but the bill he wanted me to pay was a light bill from Peoria, and I turned it away.
Thank you.
Diane.
Just a question. This change that you're wanting to make, is that in your budget here somewhere? I can't find it.
No,
Maybe I'm missing it.
anytime tonight you see a future operational change request, that becomes a decision point for you, the Finance Committee of the whole, later in the budget process. It is not
So they
included
didn't
in
put
the
it in
budget.
here already. Okay, thank you.
Stan.
I just remember when we started that committee, and Ralph and I and Lloyd and all of us served on it, the process was when we talked about the tax levy, it has to go before the voters, and then we had contacted the state attorney general, and this is one of those state mandates, and it's mandated that, you know, they can form this, and then the county has to put them in, and give them an office, and set up a budget for them. And believe you me, it's well worth it, but some of the issues I have with it is, you know, we have another armory right here in town that has a staffing person that also serves veterans. You have the VA right there in Danville, and sometimes these state mandates start out good, and when I hear the thing about possibly looking at a taxing levy to to do this, that just adds more to a homeowner, that some of them are already burdened, you know, especially if they're elderly or what have you. So we were trying to be careful with that, and working with the commission that was set up, we were able to hold a lot of the costs down because there was line items for secretaries and so forth. And I appreciate that, but you know, there's only limited money, and it's good to fund everything, but we got to remember that we're putting a lot of that on the folks that their income doesn't go up all the time.
Any other questions? James?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. The request is strictly about funds to be handed out, right?
Correct.
So that would be servicing more veterans with the current administrative capabilities that you have.
Right, it's just me.
Okay, fair enough. How much more service can we provide with it just being you? How much of the capacity of you being
I
there
can-
is free,
I
and
can
how much
service
is?
as much people as I have money, but I mean, I know I understand the whole realm of it. There'll never be enough money. LIHEAP will never have enough money. But, you know, I can service as many people as possible.
Okay, the thing that I'm kind of working my way towards is a question, and that is, are we aware if either the statute provides for, or if any other counties in the state have worked together to provide this kind of service, so that, you know, Ford County has to do this, and Champaign County has to do this, and Vermilion County has to do this. I mean, we just heard from the Regional Office of Education yesterday that can do Ford and Champaign County. Can't we figure out a way to get maybe an economy of scale here rather than doing this county by county? I know that has to be supported by the statute. I just don't know if that's ever been researched. I remember asking this question back when this was coming up.
I think we can look into that.
Yeah, because
I do know that when we went through the process of creating the division, there is no joint county. I mean, a county has it at the county level, or they don't. There's no, you know, groups that are working
No aggregation
together. No
capability.
aggregation, no.
Okay.
And it's partially because of the structure. I mean, Brad is the employee of the local Veterans Assistance Commission, not the county board, even though you pay his salary. And so the statutes, you know, could certainly use some review, I'm sure, but that wouldn't allow for it now.
Because it seems like certainly if he had, if this were possible, if he had a pile of money that was Ford County money and a pile that was Champaign County money, you could give it out to veterans from those counties based on what you had, and do it with only one administrative staff, whether that's one person now or whether that's two people for four counties.
The only problem I see of that is that the stats they go by of how many veterans are in each county is, it's a guess. It's an educated guess. So I don't know how they'd break down who was going to give up. You know, it's kind of like the Bureau thing here in town. One town said they were giving too much, and they just walked away from it. And I could see that happen down the road, so.
That was a guess either way, right?
Right. I mean, I understand that because I get, since that newspaper article hit, people from Coles County call me, and they still say they're a veteran, and I have to tell them, sorry, I can't help you. And they get very upset.
Chris?
James makes a good point, which I had never thought of either, and that's, I mean, obviously Champaign County with 200,000 people has a fair number of veterans, and there's certainly justification for somebody whose full-time job is helping find sources of funding for veterans, both from this and from other sources, which I know is what you spend most of your time doing. Ford County's got, what, 10,000 people? It would be nice if there was a way for counties to work together to sort of share those administrative costs, even if there had to be a, you know, rule that the aid had to be given to veterans in proportion to the population of the county or something like that. That might be something we could have, the state, you know, county association, or potentially going forward, Metro counties take a look at.
Any other questions at this point? Before we leave Brad, I wanted to say something here. I pop in on Brad quite often in his office. he took a program that really wasn't in existence, and he's built it into something that he and this county should be proud of. I want to thank him personally. Our veterans get short shifts after they come home. They put up their lives for us. And I want to thank you for really putting this program online to help as many veterans as possible. Thank you, Brad.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, a motion to place on file, please. Stan, Ralph, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you
Motion
for your
carries.
time.
Thank you, Brad. Let's move on. Circuit Clerk, Katie. Oh, yeah, right.
Good evening. I have 7 different funds, so if you'll bear with me.
Only 7, Katie?
Only 7.
Oh,
I
okay.
picked up a new one this year, so we will just go through them in the order I have here. The first one is our general corp budget. This fund, the revenues come primarily from fees. Those are fees that are on civil filings or on fees and fines. So fees on civil filings, fines on criminal and traffic cases. We also have some revenue from abandoned bail bonds and a little bit of investment interest, though interest these days is it's negligible, but we do budget for that. Expenditures out of this fund are primarily salaries. The other expenditures, we have been doing what we can to shift those to our special revenue funds so as to give a little bit more of a break to the general corporate fund. So, where we can, we try to shift things like office supplies to other funds so that we're not spending as much out of general corp. But we do always have far more in revenue than we do in expenditures out of this fund. Yes.
You were talking about your interest, and I notice here you're going to jump it up quite a bit. Can you tell me where you're getting a good rate?
That's what we have budgeted. The actual from, Brian, do you know where we?
Linda's, I think Linda was expecting a couple of
Because John Jay won't even give me that rate if I buy his farm land.
Yeah, sure. Our financial manager did the forecasting for each of these revenue projections. We budgeted the same for 2014 as we are for 2015.
Okay, I was just looking at 2013's actual,
Okay.
and you're almost 3 times that, or 2.5, and that's quite a jump, because I know mine's dropping.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what they've done for the last number of years, and that's.
So that's how you just did it.
I think what Linda, as our financial manager, I think what she had done in the past is she looks at that, some years there'd be more based on, if we get, someone post bond, something along those lines, especially we've had a couple small claims cases where we hold, $250,000.
Oh, okay.
She puts it into a money market account. No, more than
Yeah.
likely, but what we actually do, unless we're ordered by the court not to, we actually give the interest that's built on that to the person who the bulk of the money goes to, but sometimes that actually sticks around, and I think sometimes that it happened, but I don't see us getting 7,500, but it could be higher than that, or it could be much lower.
Okay.
It
But that
just
seems to be
depends
happening.
on
I just
what
thought maybe I'd
cases
get
we
some
have from
inside
year to year.
information on the rate, but
Yeah.
thanks.
Unfortunately, no.
We don't have, although we do try to spread out where we hold things throughout the county, so and our financial manager is always looking at the best rates that she can find, and she looks at lots and lots of different banks all throughout Champaign County, so.
Chris?
But yeah, depends.
Let's talk about fees. I keep hearing fee revenue is down, or at least down from expectations. Looking at this, it looks like 2014 projected is not much lower than the 2013 actual. Deb, do you think this 2014 projected number is still valid?
When we looked at it, when we reviewed the budget, we looked at year-to-date and based it on that. So yes, I think it should be reasonable.
Okay, and any insight into that? I mean, I've heard everything from state police are writing fewer traffic tickets, judges are imposing fewer fines on defendants. I mean, is there anything systemic here, or is this just random variation? Is this the new normal?
This is a statewide trend. We're not the only county showing a continued decline in revenue and fees and fines. Most of that is coming from a decline in, well, it's coming from a decline in case filing. So most of that is from traffic cases. In Champaign County, we are seeing, I think, 20,000 fewer traffic cases than we were in 2007. So that is a significant
Is
decrease
that
in number of
across
filings.
all agencies, or are there, is
It's
it one
across
agency
all
more than another?
agencies, but the largest jump is in the state police. The state police have not been filling positions as people retire. They also are not getting the federal grants that they used to get, where they would do they do like a Labor Day weekend, and they'd have a lot more people pay overtime and a lot more patrol officers on the road. And those federal grants are no longer coming, so they are just not writing those tickets.
Okay, that's a better explanation than I've heard so far. I had been led to believe that they were actually writing tickets at a lower rate. It sounds like, in fact, it's a
No, no.
staffing
It's
issue,
a-
that they just have
It's-
fewer
it is a
troopers on the
staffing
road.
issue. In Champaign County, we have 3 interstates running through here. There's no reason why we shouldn't be having, that, I mean, it goes just, well, we cannot possibly have 20,000 fewer violators. Our population has not changed that much since 2007.
I mean, I would believe that the 70-mile-an-hour speed limit may have helped with compliance a little bit, but, yeah, I would expect more like 5%.
Right.
I don't want to see Illinois turn into Ohio, but we got to tell these guys to get out there and do a little more work for us.
Yeah. So like I said, some of it is coming from the reduction in traffic case filings, but we also have seen a continued decline in civil filings, and that is statewide also. It's a function of the economy. People find it to be not as, if somebody owes you $1,000 and it costs you this much to file a small claims case, is it really worth it? We've seen a significant reduction in the number of mortgage foreclosure filings, which is good. That's a good thing. We don't, people in Champaign County, we don't want to see have, but that also represents revenue for us, so if that helps explain.
And just for some perspective, I believe that in the last 5 years, this revenue line had been as high as 1.9 million. So you see that in 13, it came in at 1.6, and that's, you can't see on this budget how much it's dropped, but.
Well, we're not in this for the money, and of course, I was joking about writing more traffic tickets, but I think
Right.
it's something that we need to be aware of, that we can, no longer rely on as a revenue source to the extent that we once did.
I'm sorry, Chris, it's on the record. Nothing you can do about it now. Okay, any other questions at this point? All right, Katie, continue, please.
Okay. Well, and we are doing some things, whatever we can, to increase the collections of the fees and fines that we do have assessed, and our collections rate has actually increased quite a bit. And further efficiencies that we create that make it easier for people to file cases, easier as we move toward e-ticketing, making it easier for police officers to write tickets. It is our hope that those revenues will increase in that way. Our next budget is the jury commission budget, and this is one that we took over just in this last year. This consists of primarily, this is expenditures for salaries. It's strictly salaries, just for the jury commissioners and our part-time jury coordinator. This is relatively straightforward. I shouldn't, not a whole lot else to say about this particular budget, unless you have questions. Okay. Our next fund is the circuit clerk's support enforcement budget. The revenue from this fund comes from a statewide grant from HFS. The projected and budgeted revenues, we are forecasting, but they have changed the format, or the formulas, rather, that they're using to reimburse counties for this. So as we move, for a second year in a row, so as we move into another year, it's a little more difficult to predict how much we will see in reimbursements from the state. So with that said, we're being very conservative on our estimates for revenue. And then our expenditures, what we spend out of this fund, the idea was that it would cover one FTE, which is our child support enforcement clerk. However, the revenue projections are less than what would cover for that salary, so we are shifting some funds from the child support service fund, which is another child support fund that we have, to help cover the cost of that salary, if that makes sense. Okay. Our next fund is the court automation fund. And the revenue from this fund comes from the court automation fee, which is a $15 fee assessed on all court cases, essentially, so all traffic and criminal cases, and on all civil filings. We increased this fee from $10 to $15 last year, although maintaining it at $10 for traffic cases that do not require a court appearance, because that is a set bond amount. And as well as on small claims cases, because we did not want to increase the filing fee for small claims cases by too much. So that is where the revenue for this fund comes from. We also, for the expenditures, we do pay a salary out of this fund, and that is our court technology specialist is paid out of this fund. Then we also use this fund to pay for JANO, the maintenance fees that we have every year for JANO, which is our case management system. And this is the fund that is used for the purchase of computers for both the circuit clerk's office and for the court. And any expenditures out of this fund are signed off on by both myself and the presiding judge. So this is a sort of jointly held fund between the circuit clerk and the circuit court. We do have a fund balance deficit in this fund, although the projected deficit should reduce in fiscal year 15. That was part of the reason why we increased the fee last year. Well, the primary reason that we increased the fee last year. We were hoping to see more of an increase in revenues, but as I explained before, the case filings are continually declining, so we're not seeing as much of an increase in revenues as we would like. So because of that, we have more aggressively cut our expenditures out of this fund in the next fiscal year. So where we can, we are cutting, so stationery and printing, we're no longer going to be paying for out of this fund. We would pay for out of operation and administrative fund, or document storage, yes. So we're shifting to other funds where we can, and we're aggressively cutting the expenditures out of this fund.
Diane?
As you're cutting these expenditures, I mean, I understand that you can kind of intermingle some of these funds for certain things when they overlap, but I almost wonder if you should have something in this item, because it is using stationery and supplies. I mean, I don't know if maybe it's increasing revenue by the other areas paying this fund something or whatever, but.
We actually are not, whenever we.
But I don't want to see it cut just to look right. I want it to be what's correct.
We actually
for the
are not
department.
purchasing stationery and printing out of this fund then. So if we shift the expenditures to, say, document storage, then if we write a if we write a check for something, we write it out of document storage. We do not pay for it out of this fund.
The 10,000 that's there for the stationery and printing, that's essentially, when we started the new jury system, where we sent out the postcards, we didn't have a line item, and we didn't want to burden general corp with the purchase of that. So we budgeted about 8,500, so we put 10,000 in just in case we need to send out more postcards, but that's what we have been paying that out of. Next year, that'll be broken up between, out of
Document
document
storage.
document storage and 630.
So if I can ask, if I'm getting this clear, that basically the items that I'm thinking about are probably in the office supply line.
More than likely, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Now, we do have some transfers from other funds that are our other funds and from the general corporate fund. And that is to represent the time that our court technology specialist spends in other departments, so that we can break up the, to assist in paying for his salary. If he assists the state's attorney's office, general corporate fund will be billed for that amount, that percentage. Same as for the sheriff, probation, and then the circuit court will be covered by this fund because it's a shared fund between our two departments. And the same with, if he is working on child support things, that's still within our office, but since we have a separate child support fund, we can use some of that fund to help assist with this salary.
You want to talk about long-term staffing? I guess you said that we've seen it, Debbie said there was a 20% drop in fee revenue from 2007. Did I hear that somewhere?
A 20% drop in.
Fee revenue since, you said, I heard 20% since X, but I don't remember what X was.
2007. I don't know if that's accurate. I did say that we had 20,000 fewer traffic cases.
I'm sorry.
In general.
I'm sorry, that was, okay, Deb, you said down from 1.9 million in 2007?
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, yeah,
To give
I'm
you an
jumping around a little bit.
example,
Same
that it's
office.
dropped from 1.9 to 1.65 on that line item.
Okay.
There are court fees line items in numerous budgets. I mean, the automation fee is another example.
I understand, I'm sorry, I should have said that I was sort of revisiting the general
Yeah.
budget. Does processing, it would seem that processing 20,000 fewer cases should require less workload. Have you seen I noticed the full-time employees have been stable since 2011, and I know that, I assume that is lower than it was back in 2007, obviously because the county's headcount is lower anyway as a result of the budget crisis. So I think I see that we've been able to, we've essentially had no growth since 2011, which indicates that, staffing's probably about the right level, but I'm curious whether you expect to see a decrease in staffing, increase in staffing, ability to leave positions open, need for more people. I mean, if the workload is trending down, I'd expect it to mean that the headcount might be trending down.
We do have a half-time position that has remained open for more than a year. And that position, all that position did was enter traffic tickets. So that position has remained open until such time that we have an increase in filings again. I don't know that the FTE numbers, because we have shifted reporting lines, I don't know that is entirely accurate. I think.
Well, the FTE number doesn't note that some of those positions may be vacant. So that is probably
Right. So
where,
we do
that's a
have
reasonable answer.
That halftime position that has not been filled for more than a year, but we also, the jury coordinator now reports to our office, but did not before. So that's an addition of an FTE, although it's not, the position already existed, but it.
That's reported in the jury commission budget,
yeah,
and so
I'm sorry,
there's no increase there. It's the same.
Okay. So I want to make sure it's something that we're keeping an eye on, because
what-
obviously if we're not getting the revenue,
Right.
hopefully we're getting some associated cost savings.
Every time we have a vacancy, we evaluate whether or not we need to fill that position. So if we can keep it open for a number of months, in some cases we can, in some cases we cannot. The retirements that we've had have been at the higher level, so we've been filling those internally, and then in each case, we determine whether or not we need to fill the position or not. We also have been shifting our workload to do other things. So we've been doing a lot of back scanning, things that we wouldn't ordinarily be able to do if we had a higher caseload. So those are things that really need to be done, but they're kind of not an urgent thing.
So even if there was a precipitous drop in new workload, there's enough of a backlog that there would be some lag before we would actually see a reduction in work.
It depends. As I said, we evaluate every time we have an opening. Do we need to fill this position? Do we need to fill it right now? Can we wait 3 months before we fill this position? And we'll continue to do that and carefully evaluate it every time we have an opening.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
I guess I'll ask the question a different way. Maybe there's a 20,000 caseload drop, but on how many cases that the court actually does and what other workload? Is 20,000 cases enough that you can change the number of FTEs? How many cases is the court actually dealing with?
Well, and in traffic cases, it's not necessarily a whole lot of work. It depends on the type of traffic case. If it's just a may appear, which means a minor speeding ticket that does not require a court appearance, a lot of that is simply entering the information into the case management system and collecting the money. For a case that goes to court, of course, there is a lot more involved in that, but the vast majority of traffic tickets that are written are may appear traffic tickets. So those are your seatbelt tickets, your speeding 10 miles over, the cell phone tickets, those kinds of things. So they represent, there's still work involved in filing and creating a case file and opening the case, but they aren't as, they're not as involved as a felony case or a really involved civil case.
Okay, continue on, Katie.
Okay. Next fund is the Child Support Service Fund. The revenue from this fund comes from a $36 fee that is assessed on annually to the payer of child support for all cases where we have a child support case open. So that is to pay for the maintenance of those cases. Like I said, that is where the revenue comes from for this fund. The collection of that fee was suspended for 2 years, and we just resumed collection of that fee last year as we discovered that it was statutorily required. So we needed to collect that fee. And the expenditures out of this fund, as I mentioned earlier, we are transferring some money from this fund to the child support enforcement line item to pay the full salary of our child support clerk. So that's where we are paying salaries. We do reimburse IT for services as we do from court automation fund. And we are also transferring money to the court automation fund to assist with the salary for the court technology specialist. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward fund.
Any questions? Okay.
Okay. The next one is the Circuit Clerk Operation and Administrative Fund. This fund, the revenue comes from a number of places. It comes from collection fees. It comes also from when the state assesses a new fee for, an example of when the state assesses a new fee, there's a percentage that comes back to this fund, and that is to reimburse us for the processing of the collection and disbursement of that fee. Since we are collecting it on behalf of the state and dispersing it to the various state agencies. Each legislative session seems to bring about a new fee, at least one every year, so there are additional opportunities for revenue to this fund because it comes, a percentage of that comes to this fund. The expenditures, the way the statute reads, are to be spent on things related, related to that collection and disbursement. So we pay our financial manager's salary out of this fund. We thought that was the most appropriate use of this fund, and we also use it for other expenditures. Stationery and printing, that's where we pay for all of our file folders. So all of the case files have specific file folder requirements as written in a general administrative order from the state, even down to the color of the file folders. So that's where we pay for those, and several other things that we've been shifting some things out of general corporate fund to this fund as well. And revenues are pretty healthy in this fund.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Katie, all done?
Okay, one more.
One more?
Sorry.
Two more?
Last one, I promise. Oh, no, two more.
Two more.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have two more. We have the e-ticketing fund. Where did I skip that one? Oh, okay. The e-ticketing fund, revenues come from an e-ticketing fee, and expenditures are supposed to be spent on things related to e-ticketing. So the establishment of an e-ticketing program, such and such. Until this fiscal year, the state had not yet approved any e-ticketing vendors, so we are still waiting on that. And once the vendors have begun to be approved by the state, we are expecting, hopefully, to move toward e-ticketing in Champaign County in the next fiscal year. So we have budgeted the entire fund balance to be spent in this next fiscal year, as we expect that there will be some startup cost to that, and that is the purpose of this fund. So we do hope that we can move toward that as the state of Illinois begins to approve. Okay. And finally, the court document storage fund. The fees, revenues for this fund come from a $15 fee, similar to the court automation fund. Those fees are assessed in the same situations. Expenditures are things like microfilming, what we spend on their recycling, and we have a company that does confidential shredding, things like that. So those are what we spend out of the document storage fund. Oh, as well, we spend it on the public access system that we have for the viewing of online. So when you go out to our website and view case information. What is new this year is that there is a line item here for facility office rentals, and we've been budgeting approximately the same for several years. It used to be that we actually had to rent facilities to store some additional space. That has no longer been the case. However, the Urbana Free Library the Urbana Free Library archives are housing a number of our documents. The General Corporate Fund does reimburse them for some of that, but a large percentage of what they are holding for the county comes from court records, and so we feel that it would be most appropriate for us to begin reimbursing the Urbana Free Library from this fund. So we have been talking with them, but we are planning for that in the next fiscal year.
Ms. Blakeman, thank you for that. Urbana Free Library has been doing this county a service for a long time without significant compensation, given the work that they've been doing, and I'm glad you're righting that wrong.
Well, I am happy to. They do a lot for us besides housing the information. They're cataloging it, they're making it available to the public, they're assisting the public with questions about those documents, and that is a valuable service for us. So.
Stan?
I got a couple of questions. I noticed in your budget that for your training in 14, you had quite a big sum there, and then it's dropping. Was there a lot more?
In training.
Yeah, page 68 down at the bottom, I'm sorry. 68. And then you're dropping it, so was, yeah. Is there,
In which fund
it's
is that?
53395 under your court document storage.
Okay.
The $500?
No, it's the one
Oh,
down below,
that's the total, that's
95.
the total services.
Oh, okay. See, I'm so used to lines being drawn on my paper, I'm sorry. So I stand
Okay.
corrected. Okay. I stand corrected.
Yeah.
Dang it, Patsy, why'd you wink at me? The next one's the blueprint film processing. I mean, that's, okay, I see
Yeah.
that. But
We did budget a larger amount for this fiscal year because we had some large projects that we needed to get through, but we don't necessarily
And
anticipate.
I apologize, because I had a smudge on my glasses. But the other question is, when I
Right.
toured your operation with your chief of staff
Mm-hmm.
there, I guess, we noticed that the filing system up above there, you're having some issues with it,
Mm-hmm.
and people tend to want to throw pennies in there and jam the mechanisms and what have you, and paper clips. But I know that's got to be getting to the age point where eventually you're going to have to upgrade that or do something with that overall.
Mm-hmm.
So are you, and I may be stepping out here, because I don't think we help you with your capital improvement out of general corp, or do we? I hope not. Or maybe we should.
I think it would depend on what it is, if it's structural to the courthouse or.
Like that, but that's got to be a big money
It's not
item.
something that we have budgeted for the next fiscal year, but we have been talking with them, begin to assess what that would cost us. We do have a fund balance, not a large fund balance, but if we needed to, we could dip into that fund balance.
Well, my concern was when we toured, you stated, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's almost routine maintenance coming in because they're jamming and you can't move them, and then there's the fear of someone begin in between. And my fear is a lot of times you can put a lot of money into stuff like Jay does his vehicles, but you get no value out of them.
Correct. We're to the point, on that middle floor, we're to the point where there's, two of the rollers, basically, I don't know, maybe, it's gotten a lot better. We've done some maintenance to clean out some of the paper clips that get jammed in there. The problem is when the floor settled, it, moved the tracks offline, and, it'll get out of balance, and then it'll get loose where the spring breaks, and then it won't spin. Luckily, the people that we purchased the equipment from, they actually haven't charged us to come fix that yet. The last time they came, they said, probably next time you're gonna get an invoice. So I asked them at that point, well, can you also give me a quote on what it's gonna take to fix this? So we're trying to plan that forward with you. Is one reason why we did the 120 on the blueprint last year is to do a big drainage project, and then also free up some cash in the next couple fiscal years to do a couple of those projects. Yeah, and the cleaning up of that, we've got the ability to actually clean those out pretty good now, so we're moving forward. Yeah, no, you gotta take the whole sides off.
All right, any other questions for Katie? Katie, thank you very much. I'd like a motion to place on file, please. So moved by Stan, second by John.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Move to the Circuit Court. Roger.
Good evening, everybody. I have three budgets before you this evening. The first one I'll address is, I don't know what the order is in your packet, but we'll talk about them in order, I guess. The first one is the Circuit Court budget. As noted from the narrative, is incredibly brief because, again, we're not changing anything in this budget for next fiscal year, other than the salaries that will be negotiated through the ASME contract. So there's really nothing in here that's going to be dramatically different next year than there was this year. We are working with Katie on some new technology, and we are working on the mortgage foreclosure program, which you probably read in the paper recently. But other than that, I'll answer any questions you might have about the Circuit Court budget.
I notice we're also, and I assume this is related to the fact that cases have been down, I noticed juror expenses seem to be significantly lower projected than we had expected for 2014. Is that just less business?
Sometimes it fluctuates. The problem with trying to budget for the Circuit Court with any kind of specificity is you have up years and down years, not just with that particular line item, but also with professional services. We don't know how many psychiatric evaluations we're going to have or how many cases are going to need an interpreter. It just varies. So we do the best we can based on prior years to estimate. But again, it just fluctuates.
So you wouldn't say it's a trend, it's sort of within normal limits?
I would think so,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, could you talk to us just a little bit about, it's on page 72, it's 5333, which is attorney and legal services, which is roughly 57,000, and then dropping down to the bottom of that page, it's 53474, and it's contract attorneys at 180,000.
Sure.
Is that just kind of gearing up?
It's two separate different things, and I'll try to
Okay,
answer them as
great.
best I can.
Thanks.
We have certain contracts for services rendered. For example, we have a couple of contracts with CASA to do guardian ad litem work for us. We have, and to represent kids in abuse and neglect cases. We have contracts where our public defender's office, for whatever reason, if they're co-defendants or what have you, can't represent, so we have a couple of contracts for those. So these are fixed costs. In other words, these attorneys get set amounts. They don't bill us. They get a monthly amount every month. So it's a very cost-efficient way of operating. So as much as we possibly can, in fact, last fiscal year, we added another part-time contract to fix that cost as best we could and took money out of that other line item which you're talking about. But there are times when the court has to appoint attorneys for constitutional reasons that don't fit in one of the categories for which we have a contract attorney. And that is the reason why you see the other amount in that other line item, the 57,000. That would also include things like special prosecutors when they're required. In other words, when Julia's office can't prosecute a case because of a conflict, then the court pays that out of the attorney's fees line item. So that's the difference between those two line items.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome.
Chris?
If I could follow up on that, my understanding is that part of the reason the CASA attorneys are such a good deal is because we haven't given them a raise in a while.
That's right.
Where does that, who makes that decision? Is that CASA? Is that the judge? Is that a mutual agreement? Or is that some state requirement?
There's actually no state requirement. It's basically up to the judiciary and CASA. I would love to give our contract attorneys raises because, quite frankly, it's been a very, very long time since they had them. But again, we're trying to hold the line on costs. So as long as we can keep having folks who are willing to do it for the amount that we've asked for, we're going to continue to do that. But again, it's something that obviously we would love to give them raises when it was warranted.
How long has it been? Do you have any idea?
I can't remember the last time, and I've been around for quite a while, so I can't even remember the last time it went up. CASA got an additional contract several years ago, so they went from 36 to 72, but I can't remember an actual amount that went up. I honestly cannot remember.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, continue, Roger, next.
Okay. The second one I'd like to talk about is the law library. As you recall from earlier this year, we raised the law library fee from $7 to $17. That has had a positive effect on our revenue, as you might imagine. For fiscal year 13, the monthly fee average revenue was $4,844 a month. For FY 14, it's almost $8,000 a month. The fund balance at this time for last fiscal year was about a little less than $47,000. This year, it's at $55,000. And that includes us making sure that we fully fund the help desk, which is a commitment that we've made. We also continue to fund Westlaw, which is the legal research for the circuit court and for the public defender's office, to take that burden away from General Corp. The only individual who works for that department is a part-time law librarian, Lori Hansen, who does an outstanding job. So we've been very pleased with the results from the fee increase, and we hope that we can continue to build that fund balance. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Roger, for, the self-help desk was a hit-and-miss thing for a number of years, and now we've stabilized that, and I think it's working out very, very well for the justice system.
There was one thing I did want to add really quickly. Recently, Chief Judge Flannel approached us about participating in a program called the Justice Corps, and it's similar to what AmeriCorps is. And so starting soon, in fact, it's already been posted, they are hiring a full-time person to work in Champaign County alongside our folks with the help desk to do services. This position and some of the part-time positions that come with it are funded by the Illinois Bar Foundation, so it's at zero cost to the county. There's not county employees. But they are with the Illinois Bar Foundation. And what they're going to do is help us with certain programs. For example, the foreclosure mediation program, and there are several other programs. Also, they will do work in helping folks navigate to the court, in the courthouse, where they need to go, answer questions. So it's a very beneficial to the county. It's absolutely at no cost to the county, and we appreciate the Chief Judge bringing us together on that. So that's something that is going to kind of dovetail really nicely with our work at the help desk.
Chris?
Sorry, Roger, the name of that program again?
Justice Corps.
Justice Corps, thank you.
And again, I think it's part and parcel of the AmeriCorps program. Again, it was funded by the Illinois Bar Foundation, and it's run through the Access to Justice Commission from the Illinois Supreme Court. And we were very fortunate to get some help there.
Stan?
What'd you say that fund balance was projected to be, Roger?
I said I didn't project it to be, I'm just saying at this time now, this year, it went from 47,000 last year at this time to
Roger, do you have the budget document? Because the numbers you're quoting are not accurate.
Okay, because that's what Lori just gave me today, so I
No,
wanted to.
Because we've documented it with the CAFR and the final fund balance from 13 and then where it's projected.
So this is right on our page?
This is
It's right on your
Okay, 'cause
page.
I heard
Okay, I
them name
apologize for that.
numbers. Okay, thank you.
I apologize for that. Any other questions about the law library? Okay, the final budget is new for us this year. We've not had it as part of the circuit court budget before. It's for the Specialty Courts Fund. This fund primarily funds work with our drug court. And this year, as your narrative would indicate, we're actually requesting that the county board continue funding something that they started last year. The drug court coordinator, which will for going forward will be called the problem-solving court coordinator, was funded through a grant for several years. The employee was actually an employee of Prairie Center, and that individual basically helped be the liaison and the public face of drug court. They would go out and help approach employers about getting drug court clients jobs. They will work with the clients and work out into the community, gather statistics about drug court, et cetera. The last fiscal year, the grant ran out after about 3 months, and the county board agreed to fund that position for the remainder of last fiscal year. So in the budget that you have before you now, the court is requesting that that position be funded for basically all of next fiscal year. The position has been sent to job content evaluation because, again, it was not a county position before. And the reason that it was requested to go to the county is because when we looked at the costs associated with having it be a Prairie Center position versus having it be a county position, it actually was about $14,000 less expensive to have it be a county position because Prairie Center, pursuant to the way they run all of their programs, had to pass along their fixed costs to us, including rent for office space and other expenditure, overhead and administrative expenses that the county already assumes through its regular course of business. So it's actually a much more cost-effective way to have the person be a county employee. So other than that, the fund really hasn't changed. The funds that go in that, the revenues that go into that fund are used for services for drug court clients, and those services are and those expenditures are controlled by the steering committee for the drug court and Judge Ford. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'll be happy to answer.
Patsy?
Do you have some idea of what you're expecting the position to be paid?
Yeah, it just came back from job content today. I don't have the piece of paper in front of me, but it was graded out at grade I, which I believe is between 40 and 60.
Roger.
And the reason you have it in this budget as contributions and grants is because we can't create the position in this budget until the board receives the recommendation and votes on it in September. So if the board approves it in September, then it will be moved, that 59,919 will be moved to salaries and all the commensurate fringe benefit lines within this budget. And where the position was classified, the salary fits exactly with this number and the fringe benefit costs that we've calculated.
It's between 40 and 60,000 to answer your question.
Stan?
I got a couple questions on that. So how long was that position being funded by grants?
It had been for a couple of years before this, and then there was a little bit of money left over, and so that leaked in, that was a few months into last fiscal year, and that's when the county board picked it up for the remainder of last, so it was like 3 months into last year, and the county board picked it up for 9 months of last year, so the only difference would be about 3 months different than what you spent last year on this position.
Okay, but previous to those 3 years ago, was there such a position even helping clients out, or was this?
No, it was basically created when it was my understanding, it was created when that grant money was received.
Okay, so now that the grant money's gone away for whatever reason, because they're gonna
It
use
expired.
it, right. So then if the county board doesn't pick it up, it isn't like this was a long-term position. I'm granted it may be needed, but when we're looking at the budget overall, I gotta think about, is this truly a position that, you know, if we spend the money there, is it needed elsewhere?
Sure, and obviously, those are priorities that the county board has to make, but I will tell you that the position is absolutely essential. I mean, there is really, although the drug court has a steering committee made up of good folks and the drug court team, there's really no one to go out and actually talk to potential employers and to get our drug court clients jobs, to talk to different clubs and areas where people want to understand about what's going on with drug court. It is absolutely a vital function. This is not something that is a luxury. It is a vital function.
So that money.
Stan, I'm part of the steering committee on this issue.
Oh, okay.
Let me just explain. The drug court has become very, very successful as a major program, and one reason is because of this position. It was placed 3 years ago as part of how the drug court would be able to move forward and be able to find areas that would help them after they're able to graduate from the drug court, to keep them from recidivism. And so if Roger will tell you that it's an essential service, I can tell you it's a part and parcel of the success of the drug court and very essential to the program.
I guess where I was going with that, if I may, we raised the fees, I think, a while back, $5 per ticket, and I know that hasn't been coming in like it was supposed to, but is this going to come out of general corp or out of the court fees?
This money that is for this position is general corp money.
Okay.
Oh,
This is from the Public Safety Sales Tax
Public Safety
Fund.
Sales Tax, I apologize, that's right. But the money that goes into this fund from the fee, okay, is actually used to provide services for the drug court clients.
Yeah, I see.
So they have lots of different needs, obviously. They come to us in different conditions, and sometimes they have services that need to be provided them that they can't get anywhere else. So the little bit of money that is in this fund that comes in from that revenue stream is being used for services for those folks.
I guess the only thing I would say about that is we're being squeezed with so many programs that are being asked for. And when you put a person on staff and you're paying a salary and benefits, that's there, and you don't ever really want to get rid of that person if they're doing a good job. So I think when everybody looks at this, they got to remember all the other requests we're trying to squeeze out of that. And I'm one that, and I've said this out loud and I'll say it again, that public safety sales tax, we really need to look at the buildings too. And if there's any way to use that money to enhance computers, buildings, what have you, we need to do that, because people are nice and all that, but if we don't have buildings, we're not going to have people.
I just want to add one other thing, Stan. I understand your concern. This program, this one person saves money over a period of time. If we lose that, we're going to lose the opportunity to keep these drug court graduates on the track of being good citizens rather than them recidivism and back into the criminal justice system. If that happens, or they fall back because they don't have the services that they need to help them, the cost would be a lot more if we lose this person than if we keep that person. So I want you to know that it's worth the effort now and the money for this person to save money in the future if we lose this person. Rachel?
Yeah, and I believe that we don't pay for that, but the sheriff also has a contribution towards a deputy or partial part. So it's a really important, I mean, I think it's really important. By the way, most of the money that comes from public safety sales tax does go to buildings. So we're talking about very, very little money that goes towards people.
Chris?
I was just going to make the point, I mean, from a financial standpoint, if this average drug court, I see the drug court client numbers bouncing around 30. I mean, those are people who, if they were not diverted to drug court, would probably be in jail. And 30 people in the jail is $1 million a year. So I think we got to, I understand being careful about what we're spending money on, but this may be something that, this would appear to be something that saves us more than it costs us.
John?
Well, there might be another place within this budget to find $32,000.
Thanks, John. Any other questions for Roger? All right, a motion to place on file, please. So moved. Stan,
Anytime.
second. I'm sorry, Ralph. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Raj.
Thanks, guys.
Send our regards to the judge.
Absolutely.
All right. We're going to skip K, public defender is not available at this moment. Sheriff, Dan.
Just to let the board know, the public defender and the state's attorney are teaching a trial ad course at the courthouse tonight, and will get here as soon as they can. So when they do get here, we'll go to their budgets.
Just as an aside, what Rachel said about the deputy, I just had a talk with Judge Ford today. We're having a change in our personnel. We're losing the guy who's been doing, the deputy who's been doing the drug court stuff, and I told Jeff that we would continue to provide him. We found another deputy that's got the same, almost the same mindset. So I told Jeff we would continue to do it out of our budget for at least 6 months or a year, and then we'll see how it's going. And then the other thing, so I don't forget, tickets. Our beloved legislature this year passed a law saying sheriffs and chiefs can no longer evaluate, discipline, or promote using anything that has to do with statistics in terms of traffic stops and traffic tickets. So I approached one of our senators. I said, so I can send a guy out and tell him, run radar here where I know that people are blowing through because we're getting complaints, and if he does nothing all day, I can't do anything about it. That's right, Sheriff. That's what we want. Okay.
That explains a lot. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you for letting me vent to you. I'd like to cover one of the small budgets. I'd like to just cover the changes, and then I'll answer any questions you want. I'd like to cover EMA first, which is on page 106, in terms of changes. As you know, you gave us EMA to manage about a year and a half ago or so. In the basement of the METCAD building is the operational center for EMA. There were four phone lines down there that were paid for by the city of Champaign. I don't know how that came to be, but it did. At some point this year, Champaign says, we're tired of paying for your phone lines, and so they took them out. What we have there now is only county computer-based phone systems. It's all based upon, it's just like the phone in my office. So if our computer goes down or we lose power, we literally lose phone service to the emergency operations center there. So what we've done is install 6 POTS, P-O-T-S lines, plain old telephone system, the old hardwired system, because I figured we needed a backup, and that's a recurring cost, and that's why you see that change there of $5,100. That's for the 6 lines. The installation, all that stuff, we paid for. Literally, the sheriff's office budget transferred money into EMA to pay for all that stuff. Then going over to the biggest one is in the law enforcement budget. That's the first one you have in front of you.
It's page 89.
Thank you. If you drop down to the bottom, that's the one that's got to have your eyes bugging out a little bit. METCAD. Up until recently, Champaign had a dispatcher, and then U of I, Urbana, County, and all the small towns shared a dispatcher. Very dangerous. At one time, the U of I former chief said, I'm going to withdraw from METCAD because I think it's too dangerous. We don't have enough. One dispatcher cannot handle that many cars, especially if it's busy. So we have situations where officers can't get on the air or don't call things in. That's the history. We've been talking to Rantoul for years. Rantoul is a fairly large agency, and they've never been a part of METCAD. They finally joined METCAD. When Rantoul joined METCAD, there's no way you could put all of us and Rantoul. I mean, it was already bad. So what we ended up doing after probably 2 years of discussions, Deb, what we broke up the trio. Us, U of I, and Urbana are no longer on the same. So the system is Champaign has a dispatcher, Urbana and U of I, being close, they have a dispatcher. Then us, Rantoul, and all the small towns share a dispatcher. So we've actually added to the METCAD cost because we added dispatcher, we added the terminals. It changed because it was all based upon number of calls and how we broke this up. It changed ours. We're obviously one of the bigger players in this, so that's why you see that huge increase. And the other part of that huge increase, and I told you about this in previous years, when the economy went bad in 2008, 2009, the members of METCAD made a deliberate choice. Rather than lay people off, we would intentionally underfund our capital because we had to have the money from somewhere. I mean, it was a conscious choice. Well, now it's coming to catch up to us, so now we've got double-digit increases so we can start catching up. About every 10 years, these things have to change, and the federal government imposes conditions on METCAD like the 911 cell phone locator stuff, and I don't remember the exact words. But that's where you see the big change there. In both my corrections and my law enforcement budget, you'll see that I made request for vests. About 5 years, the manufacturers say the vests have a 5-year lifespan. Now, the one I've got is 8 years old, but I'm not on the street. 5 years ago, believe it or not, they failed. The Xylon in the vest failed, and Second Chance Vest went bankrupt, but we had to replace them all. We got a federal grant for that, so that this year and next year, we've got a huge number of vests going out of service. We did apply for the federal grant again. We were told there's not that much money, and the feds don't have enough money, and you're too big. We're only going to give it to the small agencies. So that's why you see the request for additional money for vests in both corrections and law enforcement. The other thing you'll see in there that's a larger number in both of those is I'm asking for money for tasers. This year, most of my guys have tasers. Urbana and Champaign have tasers. They just come in brown wrappers. That's us, the brown wrappers, in case you didn't get that little joke. Anyway, Taser has told us they will no longer service ours. They won't repair ours. It's phased obsolescence like everybody else has. We want you to buy new ones. They're about $2,000 a piece, so rather than wait till we have them mess them fail, I would like to start replacing them in both divisions next year. The other thing you'll see on there, I hope I'm covering everything, I asked for $1,600 to buy 3 more squad car cameras. They're about $5,300 a piece. They're very expensive. I'd still like you to stick the money in there, but I may not spend it on squad car cameras. We are looking at the body cameras in view of everything that's going on. Now, my hesitation has been with the body cameras, you may not know this, the state Senate unanimously passed a bill saying police officers cannot audio record no matter what except on a traffic stop like we do now. So they didn't want us to have that. That passed unanimous. I'm hoping with everything going on in Missouri that they're going to revise that. It's a rider on another bill, never got signed, never got considered by the House of Representatives, just the Senate. We got a call into Senator Rose to see if maybe this would change some of their minds, what's going on, because, body cameras may or may not have told a bigger story about what happened down there. So if you have the money, I'd like you to stick it in there, but I'll tell you, I might spend it on body cameras, not car cameras. I think that those are the main points. Chris?
Just a couple of questions, Sheriff. I think you just missed what you said, 16,000 for cameras, right?
Yeah, did I say 1,600?
You said 1,600, okay,
16,000, yeah, 5,300 piece.
Does that prohibition on audio recording apply to dash cams as well, or is it just body cams?
Dash cams are always an exception because it was taken at a traffic stop. So that has always been an exception. And right now, we don't need an exception because there is no eavesdropping law as we sit here today. It's just what are they going to put in place I'd hate to buy these cameras and then not be able to
Okay, I
use
see.
them.
So that's, that's new legislation that's not yet in effect.
Right, it's a bill unanimous by the Senate, but
Okay.
the House never considered it.
Thank you.
Dan,
I
Dan,
didn't catch
what-
that. And my last,
I'm sorry.
my
Go
last
ahead.
question related to MECAD, this splitting up of the dispatchers, are they adding call takers as well, or just dispatchers?
Just dispatchers, as far as I know.
Same number of call takers?
Right.
Okay,
But
thank you.
as you know, the dispatchers will fill in and help.
Sure,
all
yeah,
that.
understand. Thank you.
Dan, what caused every senator to vote? I would think that that would be good protection for the police officer to be able to have that kind of recording in case there's false claims against him.
I have heard, and I've never had the ACLU tell me, I've heard from others, the ACLU has said, we want to be able to record the police, we do not want the police to be able to record any of us. I can't explain it out. To me, it makes sense. It protects the cops, it protects the municipalities, and it protects the citizens. But
Just, I don't know, it doesn't seem to make sense. Head, Aaron.
A quick question. I just noticed the tasers under the enforcement and then correctional, you mentioned cameras for correctional. Would the enforcement have camera capabilities too? Just curious.
it depends on what we do with the body cameras. A taser with the new tasers, they obviously went up in prices, just a hair under $2,000 with camera holster and all that. Corrections always has cameras. Right now, our law enforcement, they do not have cameras, so. I guess one piece of good news, the body camera prices are going down.
Any other questions for Dan? Dan, do we have any other funds?
I don't think
Okay.
so. Max
Max,
had
do you
some.
have a question?
What's a percentage of your staff that's going to be retiring in the coming year?
Oh, percentage-wise, it's not big. Of the road deputies, I would expect in the next 10 months, next 12 months, 2 or 3 will retire. Corrections always has a higher turnover, not so much retirement, but they go on to other jobs or get hired out of corrections into street law enforcement. My clerical staff, I have 2 or 3 ladies now that could retire in about a year.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions? Okay, motion to place on file, please. Chris, Aaron, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah, can we take a brief break?
All right, what's that? Yeah, we were just talking about that. We'll take a 5-minute break and then come on back. Thank you. We'll be right to you, gentlemen. Hang in there, please. All right, let's take our seats, please, like to get moving. Thank you for listening. All right, Joe, you're going to be next. We have probation court services is up next.
Good evening.
Good evening, Joe.
If I may, I'd like to start with the Juvenile Detention Center, which would be page 128. Pardon?
It's page 112.
Page
Joe,
112?
the book is right in front of you, right there. So if you go to page 112 in that book, yeah.
Okay. Basically, I'm sure it has. Just a few things to point out here. We have been pretty fortunate in the last few years on the reimbursement from the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts to have an increase. As many of you know, we do get part of our funding for salaries from the Administrative Office, and the last couple of years in particular, we've seen a substantial increase, unlike some of the other entities getting funding from the state of Illinois. I'd just also like to point out, too, that you'll see that on the next page, the number of services that we offer at the detention center. We're very proud of the fact that we have worked with a lot of entities, groups here in the community, and especially the University of Illinois, in bringing services into the community, or into our facility, I should say. We are very proud of our facility. We have excellent staff. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is having the juveniles involved in a lot of services while they're there, less time in their room, so to speak. So you can see all the services offered there. Because of the funding that we're receiving and so forth, we believe that the current programming can be maintained at our present level. On the next budget is the court services budget, which is the probation budget, and I believe that would be page 134. Once again, as in the previous budget, we did see an increase from the administrative office in the Illinois courts on funding, and that is noted in these documents. Nothing in particular associated with the services provided. We do see a fair number of individuals, both on juvenile and on the adult side, and we believe that those numbers will probably be fairly consistent with what we've seen in the last couple of years. It's the number of individuals that we supervise. And that is court services.
Are there any questions? James?
Yeah, I'm gonna wind back real quick. We had replacement pages for this section. Page 133 disappeared in that process. Use the old one? Okay.
Justification form.
Great, thanks. Never mind.
Very good. The next budget referring to is the Probation Services Fund, which is page 138. This is a fund that offenders pay each month for the services that we provide. You can see there's a fair amount of money that is garnered each year, and that has continued to go up. We believe it'll stay consistent with what we've seen in the last couple of years. Just a few things I want to point out here is on the medical supplies that has to refer with our drug testing. We do work closely with the drug court. All the drug testing that is completed through drug court comes out of this particular fund. So there's a fair amount of money that is associated with the drug testing, but the courts believe that is important, and we do believe that is an important component associated with the services that we provide. One other rather large expenditure is associated with our professional services, and included in that would be interpreters for our Latino population, sex offender assessments, counseling. These are services that an offender would not normally be able to receive, so we do have funding for that. We also have some individuals that a lot of the people do pay for their services because they have the ability. Those individuals that are ordered for services, certain services such as sex offender counseling, and they can't afford to pay it, we do not wait until they come up with the money. We will get them in the services. We will pay for it to make sure that they get the services they need. So there's a fair amount of money associated with that. And one other expenditure associated with that particular fund is not only the drug testing, but we also do the SCRAM devices, which is the alcohol monitoring devices, and also the GPS, which some offenders are required to wear.
Back to professional services, if you don't mind.
Yes.
And I'm trying to wrap my head around the items that you said, but it looks like from 2013 to 2015, it's almost double. I mean, that just seems like a huge increase compared to just, even 10% or 20% or whatever.
Well, there are occasions, we are spending more money, I think, probably for offenders who, they might get into a service and they've been paying, and then the officers contact me and say that this person has lost his job, he's in this service, he's in this particular program, and we'll pick up that particular funding. So it has gone up. And, but as I previously noted, we do want to make sure that the offender receives those services.
So you're seeing twice the amount of offenders
I would-
using these programs? Is that what you're saying?
I would say that we're seeing a lot more expense associated with interpreters. We're seeing a lot more expense associated with sex offender counseling. The sex offender counseling, I should mention, is extremely expensive, and it's over a year. And that's weekly counseling sessions and the assessments associated with that. So you could have a lot of money wrapped up in one offender.
Patsy?
I'm on page 139, in
Yes.
case people want to follow a bouncing yellow ball. And I'm looking at line 53395, conferences and training. That's one of the more generous amounts that I've read in any of the budgets. What does this cover?
That's an excellent point. The Administrative Office of Illinois Courts require that probation officers receive a minimum of 20 hours of training, detention officers 40 hours of training. So we do have to provide funding for that.
Okay.
So what we do is many of the individuals not only are members of the Illinois Probation and Court Services Association, but the training typically is associated with those particular conferences.
Got it. Thank you.
Rich?
Just to follow up on the question before, I just wanted to point out it is a self-supporting fund, and your fund balance is going up. So while we could be concerned about something doubling, it's your money. I mean, not your personal money, but,
Well, right.
I mean, it's not like it comes out of general corp that we need to really monitor what
That
you're
is
doing.
exactly right.
so.
This is a fund that's paid by the offenders.
Any other question? Keep going, Joe.
Last fund refers to, it's page 143, and that's the Juvenile Intervention Court Services Operations fee. And there's two components associated with this. I'll talk about the unexpended grant funds that's noted in the budget highlights. And that was money left over from a DCFS grant from years ago, and we plan on using that money, getting back to the question before, for training, but it'll be directly associated with juvenile officers training, and we'll probably spend that relatively soon. And then this is the operations fee that was established several years ago, and there is no plan at this point in time, because this is money that is controlled by the chief judge, that we have not received a directive as to how he may wish that we spend that money. So it is just in the fund.
Any other questions for Joe?
I'm sorry, Joe, I zoned out and missed that very last statement you made. What fund is that you're referring to?
This is the operations fund, probation and court services operations fee fund.
Thank you.
All right, motion to place on file, please. So moved. So moved by Stan, second. John, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Joe, thank you.
Thank you.
Coroner. Dwayne. Everyone is alive around this table, Dwayne.
That's good.
Good.
I am on duty, so.
Well, we may not look it sometimes, but we are.
All right.
Page 145.
Good evening. Yep, 145. Okay. I can start, I guess. Highlights on my budget. Really, we're pretty much in line with where we've been before. Some of the numbers are a little off if some of you catch them on a couple of line items. We did shift some money around. In my temporary line item, when we opened the morgue and started doing the autopsies here, when I had a change of pathologist this past year, we went from a pathologist who traveled with his own assistant, and we paid a fee to that assistant just like we did to the pathologist. He was independent. We switched and brought that in-house, and I actually hired part-time employees that worked for us. It actually was a cost saving for us per autopsy. Because we still, for our cases, we don't bill out, but we provide autopsy services right now for several counties. We do Coles County, Vermilion County, Piatt County, Douglas County, Moultrie County, a few Ford County autopsies when they requested, and a few Edgar County ones. And each time we provide an autopsy for them, we charge them a fee to use our facility. So it helps pay some of the overhead and bring in some revenue for us. So, but when we do that, one of my part-time employees now is the assistant for our doctor, and we bill out his fees, so that's collected. So what we did is we moved money that used to be in the autopsy line item, moved it over into the temporary line item. That's why that fee jumped up so high, is we just moved it from one line item to the other. That's probably the biggest change. Yes?
Dan?
I've got several questions here. I see you bought a washer and dryer. You didn't have to hire staff to run that. Hopefully your staff's running it.
Yes, we actually, the autopsy techs are running it. We had a couple issues with, we were taking the autopsy laundry, the towels and things that are used during the autopsy that get blood on them and so forth. We were paying a private contractor to take care of those. The expenses went up, and we actually zeroed that line item out for next year. We'll save the cost of the washer and dryer this next year easily. But the autopsy techs, it's good because the towels go into the washer right away after the autopsy. Sometimes we were waiting a day or two till we had enough to take because one autopsy didn't generate enough.
Well,
But we
mine's
just-
down, so I may need a
Yeah.
key. The other question I have, I noticed you put in here, and I ask everybody this, looking forward for your equipment. I know one year we bought you a van with some curb feelers and a bunch of other little gizmos on it. Is that still holding up okay for you?
Yes.
So.
We were due to replace one this year. It's still in there. They changed over, and those vans, they changed the model this year. And the deadline to order one was clear back in like February, so we're carrying that over till next year.
Okay.
We're gonna,
You're on state contract then?
Yes.
Okay. And then last but not least, that new building that's over there,
yes.
I just had a wonderful thought on my way into this budget meeting tonight, and I thought, the people that are using that building, are you all contributing to some sort of fund to keep the mechanicals and ventilation and paint and doors and all that good stuff in good shape?
That would be up to you because they're all general corporate fund departments. So if you want to put the money in their general corporate fund budget so that they pay you back and put it into facilities, you
there's-
could do that.
If their salaries come out of general corp, we could look at slicing that a little bit,
Yeah.
I think. Okay, well,
There's
that
always
shot my,
options, yeah.
that shot
You
my.
were only supposed to have two
I always feel
questions,
like if you
Stan.
have a vested interest in it, you take a little better care,
Right.
but my thought's gone, so,
Chris.
okay.
Just two comments. I see Josh Hartke stepped out, so I feel obligated to say you should be using this ozone laundry system that
Yeah.
Josh has been pushing for the nursing home and the jail with
Sure.
with considerable
Yeah.
success. So take a look
Okay.
at that.
Okay.
Josh, you can pay me back later. I did know just one minor issue. The elected official salary looks like was copied from 2013 instead of from last year. So either you're taking a voluntary pay cut or the line item's wrong.
Yeah, I got,
Point.
I
How
think
did
the
we get-
county board froze my salary for 4
You
years.
didn't set his salary this year. You set his salary.
How did we get the 90, why was it 92
It was
in the
13
fiscal year?
months.
13 months.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I understand. You'd think I would have figured that out by now.
Any other questions? Is that it? Whoop, okay. Geraldo?
I sort of have a non-related budget question, if I may ask. There is a nationally known coroner that's living in Champaign County. Have you made
Pathologist.
contact, pathologist, have you made contact with him? And
Yeah.
are you using him as a part-time services?
It's working out well.
Because he mentioned a part-time position.
Yeah, he actually is the one that does our autopsies.
That's
It's-
right. I
We
was
have,
reading about him.
we have Dr. Shippingbow, who is the pathologist who performed the autopsy on Trayvon Martin in Florida.
Yeah.
He is our new pathologist that moved here in November and works for us, so. And he's actually, it's going out fine. The more time I spend with him, we become, we get better at understanding each other, let's say, so.
Patsy?
So, yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Good evening.
I'm curious, the revenue totals and your expenditures are quite different, at least on my page here. I
Patsy,
would-
this is a general corporate fund budget. It's a department budget where revenues and expenditures don't equal.
match up?
No,
Okay.
just like
Correct.
many of the other department
All right,
budgets in the
thank you.
general fund.
We actually, I can tell you, our revenue has gone up over the last couple of years, partly because of the autopsies, and I reduced my projection for revenue next year versus what I thought we were going to bring in this year, because we also were providing services for tissue procurement agencies. When somebody wants to donate tissue, bone, corneas, things like that, we had an agency that was using our facility. If the person was in our facility, they would come after hours to our facility and procure the tissue, and I charged them a fee as well. Unfortunately, about sometime this past spring, another agency bought them out, and they have their own facility, and they've used us a few times, but to cut costs for themselves, they prefer to take the person to their facility. So I had to make a mid-year adjustment on that. I do have a program change, is it in there? Program change request that I should touch on briefly in the letter. I did have a PowerPoint presentation for you, and I'd be happy to come back and give that to you anytime when we're not here as long. Basically, we're having difficulty the number of hours. I'm just going to touch on it briefly. We're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I went through and did the last 4 years on my spreadsheets last night, stayed up late, tried to figure it out, how many calls we're getting. Over 57 to 62% of the calls that we get are between 4:30 p.m. and 8 a.m. And yet, if you work a 24-hour shift or cover a 24-hour shift, there's really 2 to 3 full-time shifts in that 24-hour shift. I only have 3 full-time deputies that work for me right now. And actually, my letter, I don't know, I must have been half asleep when I typed it, because my calculation on the number of hours in a week is a little off too. It's actually 168. And, we're budgeted for 120 for the 3 full-time employees. We're finding it more and more difficult to cover all those hours. And if you look back, I went back and looked at our overtime and our part-time budgets, and I've worked really hard to decrease that every year since 2009. And actually, to this year, from 2009, we decreased it over 14,000. But I don't believe I'm going to be able to continue to maintain that because of when the calls are coming. And I even went back and looked at, if we have 2 calls that come in, two people that die within 2 hours of each other, those overlap almost every time. Whoever's taking that call, we have another death. If it comes in within 2 hours, because of the paperwork, if we have to respond to the scene or to the hospital, wherever, those overlap, which is causing me a problem to have 2 people covering on those shifts. And it makes sense, because our overnight calls are 50% to 62% of our total calls. That makes sense, because 4:30 to 8 a.m. is 15 and a half hours versus an 8-hour day during the day. So we're struggling with that, like I said, to keep up. I have people that are on call every night, but when we have multiple calls coming in, that makes it a little more difficult. And I hate to throw any stones at Carl, because I know they're already getting beat up from their tax issues, but Carl had an expansion of their critical care unit, and they're in the process of expanding their ER beds. And, that will benefit a lot of people in the community, but unfortunately, the more people they treat, the more business I'm going to have as well, just by the sheer numbers. So I'm actually not looking forward to that, but we'll deal with it as it comes. But that's really what that's about.
Can we charge Carl?
We probably could, except for I should go back and stress that they paid for half of that walk-in cooler that we put in last year, so it's that was about 11.
What if we make a deal here? We pay for the rest of that cooler, and then you charge Carl for everything. It's time they paid up a few bucks.
We got a heck of a deal on that cooler. If you remember, they chipped in 10,000, Public Health chipped in about 11.9, and we sold the old 3-body we had for about $2,800, and all 3 of those combined covered the cost of the new cooler. So we were fortunate to get that really at no cost to us. So I don't know if I can go back and charge them, but so any other questions about my budget?
Any other questions? All right, Geraldo.
Yes.
Do we do any cremations versus burials? Because I noticed you had burial costs instead of cremation.
Yeah, we do. We have the indigent fund, and that's another thing that we've seen that's also a problem for me personnel-wise as well as financial. There's a lot of different ways that indigent people can be handled in the county. I shouldn't say a lot. There's a lot of factors. If somebody's a homicide victim, like, for instance, we had a recent homicide victim that was unclaimed and he was indigent. What happened was, if he's a victim of a homicide, he qualifies for funds through the Illinois Attorney General's office. They have the Victims of Violent Crimes Compensation Fund, and it'll pay upwards to a maximum of $7,500 towards a burial. We were able to get a funeral home to claim him and do a burial because they could make some money off of it by collecting that money. Again, some funeral homes won't take that because they got to file with the state, and it's the same story. It could be 8 months before they get reimbursed. Cremations, again, are another thing. If we have veterans, usually we don't handle those because I call the VA in Chicago. They handle those. Of course, I found out last year that I thought the federal government was paying for those burials or cremations, but they actually contact funeral homes and find a funeral home that will donate the services. So that happens. If we have, we actually have a lot of people that are just unclaimed. It's going up and up and up, and we're successful. First, we'll find family if there is no family, but I can't even tell you how many people we've had in the past year or two that we find family and they tell us, you know, I haven't talked to my father in 25 years. I really don't want anything to do with it. And then it falls back on us. The law does allow us to liquidate assets if they have any assets. And I've gone through that a few times where we've seized some assets, had them liquidated, and we use the money to pay for the cremation. Whatever's left, we send back to the family. Unfortunately, probably over 75% of the time, there's no assets to be had. So, but unfortunately, that whole process takes me close to 2 months if we can get it done quickly to get somebody taken care of that's unclaimed. There's a waiting period. The VA usually, if they're unclaiming their veteran, the VA has a policy, they won't claim them for 30 days. So if I have family members, I usually get the family members to sign a letter to the VA saying they're not claiming the body, and the VA will step in usually within 2 weeks. But if not, they'll wait 30 days to make sure the body's not claimed, so they'll stay in our morgue for 30 days. So those are just examples, and again, that's causing us, that's stuff we never used to have to deal with, and we spend, it seems like, as much time now handling cases like that in the office than we do even handling just death investigations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Dwayne, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Motion to accept on file. Diane and Max, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Dwayne.
Good night.
All right, let's move on. Next page, information tech, IT.
Hello. So my budget hasn't changed much from last year to this year, with the exception of the addition of an expenditure line item for $12,000 to establish a training budget for IT, which was recommended by the Maximus Technology Assessment that the county board paid for in 2007. The staff has a need to develop new skills with regard to web programming, the operation of our IBM System I server, and also we have a new person in the Kronos reporting position who needs training in the Kronos HR and timekeeper system. So I'm asking for $12,000 for training money for that. And I've included a breakdown of classes that I foresee my staff taking for the next 3 fiscal years that would account for how we plan on spending that money. That's pretty much the only change from this year to last year. Last year, we started billing non-general corporate departments for IT services. We brought in about $110,000 last year from that. Probably not that much from that. Some of that $110,000 last year was also reimbursement for Kronos maintenance and some other items. I think we brought in about $77,000 in billings to non-general corporate departments for IT services. We expect that to continue this year. Other than that, I really don't have any changes in expenditures. The budget that I had pretty much covers all the commodities. The increase I got last year for photocopy services is going to cover the photocopy expense this year. I don't anticipate any big changes in expenditures next year from any of that. The other 2 items that I'm asking for, I have 2 program change requests in my budget. One is for disaster recovery services for the IBM System I server. That's the main business platform for the county that runs the accounts payable system for all county departments. It also runs the animal control system. What purchasing we do is handled through that. Another portion of the IBM I server runs the JANO case management software for the court system, and it also runs the public safety and corrections software for the sheriff's office. We have a long-standing need for a disaster recovery plan for that system. We have depended on tape backups stored off-site since we first went on the IBM system in the 1970s. Right now, we back the system up nightly. We bring the tapes out here. It's located at the courthouse. We bring the tapes out here, store them in a fireproof cabinet. But again, if we have a disaster, that means we're down until we can obtain a new system from IBM, which would be anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks in time. So what we're proposing to do is to co-locate a second AS400 at a Tier 3 data center in Oak Brook that our IBM business partner, Levi, Ray, and Schaup, has leased some space at. They're going to provide us with a second AS400 at that site, and we're going to replicate the data on the current system in real time to that system, so that if we have a disaster that renders the courthouse or the AS400 IBM I-Series inaccessible, we can fail over to that system from anywhere. We can get an internet connection, and we can keep the business of the county going. We evaluated 2 different methods for doing disaster recovery. One of them was purchasing a system and locating it on our campus out here at Brookins, but for various reasons, we decided that the co-location proposal was a better proposal for us. One of the primary reasons is because the firm that we're going to contract with will take care of making sure that the operating system and the hardware is always operational and is always up to date. So we're not in a position where we have to maintain 2 systems with our staffing. The firm that we're going to contract with is going to take care of maintaining that system for us. So all we have to do is push the data to it and then connect to it anytime we do an upgrade here or anytime we have a disaster. The second program change request I'm asking for is also something that has been recommended by the Maximus study. We're one of the smallest IT staffs of comparable counties. I think we're second to Rock Island right now. Rock Island had some cutbacks in the last year, and they've actually dropped to 6 people. But other than Rock Island, we're the tied for the second smallest IT department of comparable counties. We have a real need for having an additional desktop support position to run around and help people when they have computer problems in various offices, to check on hardware that's failed. Right now, we have 1 person devoted to that task. That person covers 11 buildings between here and downtown Urbana. So we're frequently in a situation where that person might be working at a problem at the nursing home when something at the courthouse crops up, and we're unable to respond in a timely fashion to the problems at the courthouse. Having 2 desktop support positions would enable us to station 1 person downtown permanently, so we could have 1 person on site at the sheriff's department in the courthouse, as well as 1 person out here on the east campus to handle anything that comes up at Brookins or the nursing home or the satellite jail, highway, or JDC. In addition, one of the other reasons that we're asking for that position is we've taken on a lot of additional responsibilities in the last few years. We took over responsibility for all the computers at the nursing home and all the technology infrastructure at the nursing home. We didn't add any additional staff for that. It's a very labor-intensive organization. They're caregivers, they're not technology people. So they tend to struggle with changes in technology. So it requires a lot of hand-holding over there whenever we swap out a computer. For instance, when we upgraded them from Windows XP to Windows 7, they had difficulty navigating the Windows interface, so we had to provide hands-on training to some of the staff on how to get around Windows 7. We've had the same issues over there with changes from Office 2007 to Office 2010. So we've got, and another problem that we have over there is the age of their equipment, which requires more hands-on effort on our part to keep their computer equipment up and running. A good deal of the computers that they have over there are 6 years old. We're having difficulty finding parts for them and keeping them going. We're scavenging parts from some of the broken computers to keep some of the other computers going, and it's kind of labor-intensive. We've also taken over responsibility for the mobile data computers in the squad cars, which is a new responsibility in the last few years. We're going to be implementing a new security authentication system for the MDCs either later this year or next year, called two-factor authentication. It's kind of like what you use when you log into the bank, a bank website, where you have to provide your password and then you have to verify that you're looking at an image. It's a little bit more strict when you're talking about law enforcement data. So we have to actually have some back-end servers to handle all that kind of stuff. We're also anticipating that because the road deputies are going to be using this in their squad cars on all 3 shifts, that's going to lead to some additional service calls from remote locations where people can't get logged onto the MDCs that we're going to have to help troubleshoot. There's several other items that I outlined in that program change request of additional tasks that we've taken on in the last few years as well, that it would be helpful to have more staff to help us meet the needs of.
Any question? I know the questions are going to come from this side of the table. James?
Here's the good news and the bad news of having a IT manager on your county board. You guys might want to get a cup of coffee. This could take a minute. No, actually, I think this is going to be pretty easy. Andy, on your training, I notice SCCM training.
Mm-hmm.
How deep are we into utilizing SCCM so far?
Well, we haven't deployed it yet. We're still using SMS and Systems Upgrade Center. But one of the things that Greg wants to get into is SCCM. And he would like to take a training class in order to find out more
excuse
about
me,
using it.
either the rest of us can take a break and leave while the two of you converse.
That'd be
but
fine by me, Al.
If you would
because
give
we'll
us a
get
little
done
bit
faster if
of-
you don't
I just
interrupt.
need layman's term, some layman's terms, please, James.
SCCM
Chris is leaving.
See, the other IT guy's leaving too.
SCCM is a Microsoft platform that allows us to automate a lot of software pushes out to computers. We can use it to push out Windows updates. We can use it to push out antivirus updates, Microsoft Office updates, and things like that. The new version, what?
I mean, we're getting spammed like crazy.
Excuse me, Al, I think I have the
I'm
floor.
sorry, go ahead, James.
Can
I'm
we get
sorry.
through this?
So
Well-
the SCCM platform is the newest iteration in Microsoft's platforms for rolling out software to computers.
So, and to help the rest of the board understand this, utilizing this eliminates what they might understand as sneaker net.
Correct.
Where people have to go out and actually touch machines.
Correct.
To do work. So it's a step towards making us more efficient.
Well,
For
it's
supporting
a step that we've been using
equipment in the field.
to stay efficient, and it's one of the strategies that we've used over the last 10 years to minimize our need for additional staffing.
Yeah, so while it might look like a chunk of money in a training, it turns
has a huge-
into
right.
efficiency that
Right.
we find valuable. I'm curious, did you guys, since we're such an IBM shop, did you look at their enterprise management tool before you committed to SCCM?
No, because we're, on that side of the house, we're a Microsoft shop. On the IBM side of the house, it's basically just the System I.
Okay.
So, I mean, there are tools that go along with that, but
Okay,
basically, we've only got one guy that does the System I, and that's Tim. I don't think we have a couple of people who can do the Microsoft side, so and it's easier to find people that can do the Microsoft side, so I think it makes more sense to focus on the Microsoft side.
the reason why I ask is the IBM equivalent of SCCM to Microsoft's product actually costs some money, but in the evaluation we've done on campus, SCCM is sometimes considered free because it's part of our Microsoft agreement. But the complexity of managing it takes a lot more time, so it involves a lot more embedded costs. That's the only reason why I was asking that.
We can take a look at the IBM platform.
Yeah, yeah. So the other question I had was this plan for disaster recovery, which I'm very glad to see on here because we always get that comment on our audit. How does this, now, am I right in the city of Urbana uses a similar platform?
The city of Urbana actually has 2 AS400s that they own that are located in their facilities. And one of them is what's called a cold system. So they only bring that up to make sure that the operating system is up to date.
Yeah.
If they have a disaster, they have to transfer all the licenses over to that. And again, they would have to operate from someplace on their local network in order to access it.
So how deeply have we looked into, instead of handing over a barrel of money to Levi, Ray, and Shope, right?
Yep.
To help us out with this, to enter into a cooperative situation where we back Urbana up and they back us up?
Their system is tremendously smaller than ours.
Okay.
And it would cost them a huge amount of money, more than what they currently expend on their AS400 to work with us on a joint system.
So we're a barrel of money to them, just like LRS is a barrel of money to us. Okay.
We haven't talked to the new IT director about it recently, but it is something that we talked to Urbana about last year when they were in the process of replacing their AS400, because we thought at the time we might see some efficiencies if we could get them to help us pay for a second AS400, but the cost was just so far out of line, they couldn't justify it.
I think it's worth revisiting that one more time now that Sanford Hess is there and actually making some inroads into modernizing.
The thing is now is they're not in the market for an AS400, so they're 5 years away from looking at anything to replace what they currently have.
Okay.
Because they
Andy,
just
come a little
purchased
closer to
something
the
last year.
microphone. Bring the microphone towards you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, like me hanging over it here.
Yeah.
And for this LRS disaster recovery model, do they have an AS400 sitting there waiting for us to use? Or are we paying for the right to use one of the ones they have up there in the case of our emergency?
They have a very large system up there that is partitioned into many different partitions. It's called an iCluster system. So what we're going to be doing is leasing a portion of that large system.
So it's always there?
It's always there.
And if there's an emergency that takes out, 3 states in the Midwest, we're not going to find out that, no, sorry, these customers are ahead of you in this list?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
We have indefeasible rights to that system if there's a disaster, I guess is what it boils down to.
Thank you. Because I know one way that companies make money in that business is to lease the same equipment over and over again.
Yeah, no, they're
and
not.
trust that not everybody's going to have the same disaster
It's
at the same
ours,
time.
and we'll be able to fail over to it not only when we have a disaster, but when we do our 3 or 4 day operating system upgrades to our in-house system, we'll be able to fail over to that system for the sheriff's office and the court system, which is huge, because right now, when we shut the system down on Thanksgiving Day weekend to do an operating system upgrade, not only is the sheriff reduced to using paper at the jail, the people who are doing weekend bond court over Thanksgiving weekend can't look anything up on the system as far as, prior arrests or anything like that. So this will give them some continuity whenever we're doing upgrades on the system as well.
Okay. I want to go back to some of your key performance indicators. I'm looking specifically at the help desk tickets and help desk emails.
What page is that, James?
That would be 155.
Thank you.
And I note that that's roughly just a little over 10,000 a year items in aggregate.
Correct.
What does the email number represent? Does that represent requests and responses, or, hi, do you want to get coffee? What's all in
Requests
there?
and responses to the help desk.
So it's not a true number of incidents, it's how much chatter is going on in support of people.
Correct.
Okay.
So it could be a series of, how do I do this? This is how you do this. I don't understand your instructions. It
But
could
it's
be
the whole, each one counts as a tick, right?
Correct.
Okay. Because I will tell you, I'm going to be, I may be the only one, hopefully not, but I'm going to be supportive of the addition of another help desk associate, and I'll tell the board why. I actually spent some time evaluating IT organizations. I've been paid to go to Michigan State, for example, and evaluate their IT organization for auxiliaries there. And by any stretch of rule of thumb for staffing, for supporting this kind of operation, we are woefully behind. I mean, we're talking about one help desk person for roughly, let's say, in a generous situation, 5,000 incidents a year. And you want to break that down by month, and you want to break that down by day, it's way out of whack. So I'm going to be supportive of that addition, because I'm not sure how we can do what we have in front of us and make progress on the more strategic and other things that this county needs to get done while we're bailing water this fast. I do have a question about the staffing levels in the comparable counties. Would I be right in, and Deb, chime in if you need to, the count for Champaign County doesn't include the one person over at the courts that is an IT person? So we have 10 people doing IT-like behaviors across the county?
Yeah, I think you could also count the technology specialists in the county clerk's office.
So okay, but we don't know, do we know if these other counties have, I mean, this is a classic problem at the university too. People name their jobs various things, and it's hard to tell whether it's an IT job or a research job or what have you. But
For most of the counties, I talked to the IT directors about their staffing directly. I didn't just take it from their budgets. So I tried to glean from them whether or not these were positions that they had, or whether or not they were positions in other departments. And for the most part, they are all positions in IT. The biggest exception was Madison County, where the circuit clerk's office has maintained kind of their own data processing department for their case management software.
And you added that in?
Well, they have, in the past few years, IT has started to absorb those staff members through a reimbursement arrangement with the circuit clerk. So those staff members are part of IT too now.
okay. Well, the other thing the other reason why I think it's good to hire another help desk technician, and it's important to understand that when we only have one and we're supporting this volume of work, when that one person is tied up, that means our system admins are helping out, or Andy's helping
That's
out, or
absolutely
the
correct.
IT manager is helping out, and we're paying way more than we should to get those problems solved, because a help desk technician is $35,000 to $45,000 a year position, whereas an IT manager is 60 to 70, and Andy's time is more than that. So we got to figure out what's the level that we need to get to, and one job at a time may be the way to approach this, that we are not having more than 10 or 15 or 20% of the tickets bumping up to that next level at first response. I mean, some of them have to because of expertise, but we have to get a handle on this. It's not unlike not fixing our roofs or taking care of our physical infrastructure.
But yeah,
IT infrastructure is part of making things work these days.
You really nailed it. One of our systems administrators spends the first 2 hours of every day down at the courthouse taking care of help desk tickets that have either come in first thing in the morning or come in overnight. And we're just trying to provide good service to everybody, but it hinders us in advancing server upgrades, eliminating all the Windows XP computers from the network, which we're still struggling with, when we don't have enough of help desk tech support
Yeah.
to deal with the day-to-day issues.
The county should be no more happier about one of your staff driving back and forth twice a day downtown than the sheriff is about his staff driving back and forth when they're not actually accomplishing anything in the meantime, because that's all overhead that's lost. We're not gaining any expertise. So I like the idea of someone being dedicated in downtown. Something I'm going to throw out there that Chris and I discussed before he took off was all the support that seems to be going on for the nursing home, because that seems to be a pretty big chunk, and that
Yep.
seems to be high maintenance, I'll call it, support. So as we talk about various things about the nursing home and the funding and maybe debt service and things like that, we have to recognize what kind of services we're providing in that scenario that we might want to be charging back for.
They pay.
They do?
They pay.
To the degree that they use it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We billed them using the same formula last year that we billed all the non-general corporate fund departments.
Well, then
and they paid.
you can ignore most of what I just said.
Yeah, with
but-
that, and that's one of the reasons that I'm coming to ask you guys for a position, because now that we're billing these departments for our services, I think it's incumbent upon us to have the staffing that
We only
we
bill
need
them
to-
when we deliver it, right?
Well, we bill based on the number, it's a formula that I came up with, and it's based on basically the number of users that you have on the system.
Oh, so it's a service level agreement.
Right.
Okay, yeah, then we have to staff according to the level to meet it.
Yeah.
So, sorry, guys, I had a few questions.
No,
Thank you.
I actually understood some of that, James. Thank you.
Once we got off of SCCM.
So I still want to go back to my complaint that I've lately seen, I don't know if everybody else has, a ton of spam and superfluous. What's that? It's not about the budget, I know, but I'll talk with you tomorrow about it, Andy. Okay.
And
All right, are there any other questions?
Yes, Al, there's a lot of spam.
There's a lot, yes, thank you.
It's
Jim,
good fried.
Jim, go ahead.
I won't talk about spam.
Go ahead.
But I would support the position too, because it would improve the productivity of the staff and the public service that we're supposed to provide.
I as well. Any other questions for Andy? John?
Yeah, I was just curious if you had indicated that these other departments are paying their share of what they're asking you to do.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. Thank you.
I think we came up, everybody, we talked to everybody about the formula that we came up with for billing back, and I think everybody was satisfied with what we came up with. One of my key indicators for whether or not I've come up with a fair formula is how much argument I get from the Regional Planning Commission. And we actually came to an understanding about what we were billing, and last year, everybody left with a smile on their face. So I'm comfortable with the formula that we came up with. Betty's real good at examining all those things and making you explain, the basis for how you develop your costs. So it was quite helpful.
All right. Since there are no other questions, a motion to place on file, please. John, second. Aaron, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're going to drop back to number K, which is the public defender who I see sitting here. Randy, come on up. What's that?
Page 83.
Okay, oh, thank you. Page 83, go back on your book. Are we sure it's page 83, Deb? Oh, okay. All right, I just want to make sure that it's 83. Let's, okay. Shoot.
I apologize for being late. I had an obligation earlier, and thank you for taking me when I got here. I know Julia Reitz was with me before, so she should be coming shortly. Our budget is pretty straightforward. moved around from some line items to other line items because historically, for example, we have to do a lot of budget transfers to go into office supplies. So we just, from the start, put more in that one and less in other ones and things like that. But really, our office is functioning very well. We had taken a lot of cuts over the years in the past, but we seem to be doing reasonably well. The big change from last year, you guys were very gracious enough to give us money for an investigator. And I put some of the statistics in here that show how useful he has been. He is, I don't know how to say it other than he's been a godsend. It's just been amazing to be able to have him in the office and to help us with the investigations. There's really not a whole lot I can say about the office. If anybody has any questions about what we do or the financials or the structure, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I don't see any questions. Deb? Deb. Sorry.
Yes, I did make a request, and I understand the budget's tight, but you can never get it if you don't ask, and so we did that for a number of years with the investigator, and we were gracious enough to get that. We did a number of years ago have to lay off a full-time secretary position, but our caseloads have never gone down, so we still have the same amount of files to open and close and things like that, and my office administrator is essentially doing legal secretary work quite a bit because we cut that position. So it would be nice if we were able to get that reinstated. We have also requested a part-time social worker. We've had some interns from the U of I social worker school work for us free of charge periodically. It takes some time to get them up to speed, but they have been very helpful in helping us get releases of information and records from people, schools and doctors and other locations to help us with sentencing hearings and the like. And it would be very nice if we could have actually an MSW on staff. Either of these we could start this year, next year, the year later. We could start it mid-year, but that would be a request we have for down the road. I'm happy to answer any questions about that or anything else.
Patsy.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thanks for coming over so late. I'm curious, and I should have been asking this of other folks. On page 84, I'm looking at line 53333, and it has to do with telephone service. And is there any way of aggregating the cost of telephone service throughout the courthouse?
You know, that's an excellent question. I am not the person to ask,
Okay.
but I'm sure there are ways to do that. I know that one of the things that we do is Westlaw is a legal research mechanism, and I know that you get a cheaper rate if you have larger groups, and we have associated with the judiciary to build up our numbers, so we have a lower rate for that.
Right.
I'm guessing that the county could look into some kind of phone aggregation. I don't know, though.
Well, this is not for our regular phones, because we have already done that for our
Oh.
regular phones. What you see is some departments have cell phones. And there are very diverse issues with regard to what departments want in their cell phone plans, which is why we have not aggregated it. We've talked about it
Okay.
at different times, but what the sheriff wants is very different from what the coroner wants, from what the public defender wants. So it's something that we do look at, though, periodically.
Thank you.
If I could add, my office does not have cell phones.
Your budget is because you have collect calls from people calling for
We
your
represent
office.
many, many people who are in the Department
Ah, I
of Corrections,
see.
and we
Okay.
write letters to them, but sometimes we need to talk to them because you can't communicate weeks at a time doing
Right.
this. And so we have to do calls, and that's the bulk
That
of the
would
expense.
explain the large amount. Okay, that
exactly.
helps me. And then on page 86, I'm just curious, your felony cases, that's a bit of a bump up for next year as compared to projected for this year. Is there something you know that you'd like to explain to us on that?
No, I mean, these projected in numbers are really based on just a number of months so far in this year. So it's just, you know, if you have 1 or 2 months this year that are kind of lower than normal, you're going to have a lower projected number. I
Right.
think for the last several years, we've hit about 2,000 felonies.
Okay.
So the first couple of months of this year were a little lower than normal, but I'm still projecting that we end
All
up
right.
with about
Thank
2,000
you.
per year, yeah.
James.
Yeah, this isn't completely on track, but it's a follow-along to the question about phones. Has there been any real discussion in the county about moving into this century and not providing cell phones for staff. Because at this, 20 years ago, if you had a job where you had to be online at home, companies paid for your internet connection, and then the internet became ubiquitous. In the last 10 years, it's been cell phones. They've become ubiquitous. And a lot of people don't even have landline phones anymore. We'd be aghast if someone asked us to pay for their home phone line because we wanted to be able to reach them at home. And these days, I think we should be moving towards a time where cell phones are not a company-provided service, but a personal provided service. I know there are varying degrees of reactions to that kind of suggestion, but in the long term, I think everybody's going to want they're not going to want to carry multiple devices, and since they mix their use so much, they're not going to want to have be beholden to the county for what they can and can't do on the phone, particularly with all the FOIA activity that goes on in some jurisdictions around this area. So just a
Which is
thought.
one of the reasons, because we are a public employer, to keep the public business on a public device. And we have many employees who we require to have cell phones, who I suppose you could say that everybody has them, but I don't know if they would have plans that are commensurate with us being able, I don't know. It's something we can look into.
Now, I'm certainly not comfortable with public officials having cell phones provided by the county, but I know that happens all the time, too.
Well, some have, like mine, emergency management. Because of my authority to have to sign on disasters, I have to be informed, and during the tornado, I was informed on my county cell phone. Is that what you're talking about, James?
I'm just saying the world is changing. What seemed normal, 10 years ago won't be normal 10 years from now. So let's be on the vanguard and save the people some money.
All righty. Any other questions? All right, motion to place on file? So moved. Stan, second. Geraldo, all in favor? Aye, opposed, motion carries. Randy, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night, sir. We're moving to,
If we could take physical plant, public properties next.
yeah, that's nice, yeah. We're going to move to physical plant, and that's going to be Dana, right? Dana is our physical plant.
We have to have 12. Okay, nobody else can leave.
What? Nobody else can leave now. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, we got 12. Okay. That's it. Dana.
I'm up. All right, thanks for hanging in there and staying awake. Page 182, I think. Well,
170,
somebody
guys,
took the book.
170.
Yeah, I've got some, but they're not numbered correctly, obviously. Thank you.
I didn't quite get you there.
Yeah, well. Thumb quickly. Thank you, Betsy. Okay. Randy took the book. Well, for the most part, it's status quo, as with a lot of these. We spent time, obviously, going off a 13-month year back to a 12-month year. We did make some line item changes within, but cumulative total is less than last fiscal year's budget. I guess I'd open up for any questions. Material is there. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it adequately yet, but.
This could be very quick. Is there any questions, or anybody want to look over take a few seconds to peruse? Patsy, go.
I knew that she had
Of course.
at least
Hi. I love this amount of money we get for rent. It's on page 171, 362.15. And then we get parking fees. Can you sort of fill us in on that?
Well, the rent is for office rental.
It's office rental. Oh,
Office and space rental, so that
It's
would,
it's our revenue, Patsy. It's for all the office. We rent to the Attorney General, we
Oh,
rent to the
okay, I
Park
got it.
District.
Yeah, all
Okay.
of them here in the
Park,
pots.
parking fees are associated with the county courthouse.
the courthouse,
There's
okay.
the fees for our public lot there.
Okay,
We
got it.
collect fees, Urbana collects a ticket.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? No, I guess that takes care of the facilities.
No.
No? You have a,
operational change.
is there
Yeah,
operate-
the
some
operational change.
Go ahead.
As soon as I get to it. On page 177.
Yeah.
Requesting for 2.5 full-time employees, an increase. The first is for a skilled trade position. 1st of August, we started taking care of the mechanicals, electrical, and plumbing systems at the nursing home. This requires additional staffing. We're pretty much maxed out on our skilled trade and maintenance folks as is. It is reimbursable, so any time that is spent there working on their equipment for normal repair, maintenance, and so forth is billable back to the nursing home. But really feel that a skilled trade, someone who's got HVAC experience, electrician or plumber, that would be awesome. To be hired to be placed over at the nursing home. They'll spend the majority of their time there and be trained on the equipment and the operating system for their mechanicals. The second position is an additional maintenance position who would be assigned to grounds. Right now, we have one grounds person. We take care of 50 acres approximately, and we take care of snow removal. Basically, we're mowing grass, and a lot of us move snow because of the extreme amount we had this past winter. By hiring one additional person, we can get other things done to make the county property look better. We've got trees that need to be trimmed, bushes that need to be cut back. We can spend a little bit more time spraying weeds around buildings and doing things to improve the sight of our property as we enter. Particularly, we want to pay a little more attention to that. So when the public comes, it's not a weedy mess, and we have some plant life that's respective certainly of where we live. The third position is a half-time position, which our goal is to combine with another half-time position we currently have in a custodian. This person would be assigned to take care of floors, is their primary job. Currently, we do not have a floor expert or person. We're taking care of a little over 800,000 square feet of property under roof. With 6 full-time and 6 part-time staff members. The courthouse is going to be the primary location with the terrazzo tile floor there. It needs constant attention, and we need to be able to address that as well as some other floor needs. So when that's caught up to speed, we can move them to other buildings and do some other tile work and carpet work as time becomes available. But in order for us to really do a good job with the terrazzo floor, we need to have somebody full-time on it. Currently, all of our positions start early in the morning and go throughout the day. This floor position would actually have to be a night position. You cannot clean floors adequately when people are in buildings walking through, if you're waxing or removing, whatever. So those are the 3 positions. 2.5 full-time employee increases is what we've asked for.
Tina, going to, back to what we were just discussing, future staff increases. The skilled trade position, having been on this board, unfortunately, when we were building the nursing home, and going through all that absolute disaster with the mold, and then the HVAC system. I just want a clarification that this staff person is going to be basically the skilled trade position. Is going to be basically 100% working on HVAC system problems?
A lot of their time will be HVAC, but they'll be doing other systems. We're also in charge of the electrical systems, plumbing systems at the building. If we find a trade skill who's either a plumber, electrician, or HVAC specialist, obviously we'll back them up with other people, depending upon what the issue is with any of the mechanicals. So, but yeah, there's a tremendous amount of HVAC equipment within that facility, changing filters, belts, taking water temps, making sure that it's up and running and in compliance with code to stay open, making sure that all life safety equipment, fire systems up to speed, electric lock systems. Just the other night, for instance, last night when the storm came through, I think we spent probably about 6 hours over there working to make sure that their electric locks were back up and working, as well as the nurse call situation. Close lightning took out a lot of electric systems temporarily, so.
Okay, thanks, Dana.
Dana, where are we on identifying and purchasing a automation system for our tickets, our maintenance tickets?
We're still investigating. It is in next year's fiscal budget is our plan to purchase it. We've kind of circled around 2 or 3 software companies that we've looked at. Both Kirk and I have spent some time with, and on at least one of them. We'll look at it a little harder this fall, and hopefully, pull the trigger this coming fiscal year.
So where's that cost going to show up as we look at things?
It'll be inside our budget, our physical plant budget. It's not a huge expense. Yes, it would be a recurring cost, but the systems we've looked at are pretty nominal. They're $4,000 to $5,000 annual fees with a small number to get you up and running.
So it didn't
And given
require
that
a
it's
change.
technology, we'll probably do it out of the capital asset replacement fund for the facilities budget.
For the initial purchase?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? John?
I didn't catch this. How many square feet of floor did you say we had?
I believe we're almost at 800,000. We might be slightly under that because we just knocked down 5,500 square feet at the Leah's.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dana? All right, a motion to place on file, please. So moved by James, second by Stan. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're going to jump back to page 112. The state's attorney has graced us with her arrival. Number N on your agenda. Hi, Julia.
Good evening.
Randy did.
Oh, wait, it would have been Randy, wouldn't it have been? Huh? I was probably supposed to bring my own, but.
Yeah.
Did he take it? Really?
Yeah. So tomorrow you can tell him about it.
Oh, I will.
He was tidy and he folded everything up.
Sorry for the delay, although apparently it all worked out fine. I was teaching tonight. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. I don't really have anything remarkable to point out. I think my budget this year is very similar to last year's budget. I'm not asking for anything new or extraordinary. We're moving along very comfortably with what we have and working within our budgets as they've been allocated. So I think some things to highlight are we continue to really try to increase our forfeiture revenue and use that appropriately. The federal government has provided us recently with some additional assistance in defining what's appropriate to use that money for, and that's been very helpful, I think, in making sure that we're using that funding to its fullest capacity. And so we have been expanding our efforts in the area of forfeitures in order to make sure we're taking advantage of that. I have a staff person who I've moved more into that area, and that's been very helpful and effective in making sure we're getting the most bang for our drug dealers' buck that we can. And working with the federal government also to make sure that we're getting a portion of funds that our local agencies do the work, and then the federal government takes over the case, but we're still, we've worked out agreements with them to make sure that we're getting a share of that funding as well. But as far as the general office budget, it's pretty stable, and we're moving forward. I have also the support enforcement budget, which in the past couple of years has been a source of concern for me as far as whether the state was going to continue to cut that budget or to essentially take that contract away entirely. And I think we have really worked on our on how we're handling that part of the office, and to the point now where they are not cutting that budget this year. They're not increasing it any, but they're not cutting it. And so that's been a very positive change for next year, I think. I think that's becoming a part of the office where that used to be basically funded entirely by the state, but we've definitely moved to the point where the county is supplementing that funding because it has been cut over the past years. Again, this year it's stable, but in order to comply with our AFSCME contracts and the county raises for the non-AFSCME employees and just other operational issues, the county has taken on a chunk of that, but I think that's appropriate given the importance of that area as far as ensuring that custodial parents, indigent custodial parents are able to get that support that they are entitled to. And so that's been a stable part of the office, but I think that's positive news, actually, because in the past few years, that's been a place where funds have been cut. Otherwise, I think everything's very stable, and again, I'm making changes within my staffing, within my office, but within the budget that has been set for us. And so I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has, but I'm not asking for anything.
Patsy?
Hello.
It's not on, Patsy.
I can.
Thank you. I'm looking at page 119, and I'm just curious, on line 33125, you're projecting a nice increase on that amount. What's your basis for that increase?
If you look at fiscal 13, it's actually less than what was
Yes, I
received
saw
in
that.
13. And I think part of the issue is crossing over, this is, the state awards this money on the state fiscal year, and
Right.
aligning it with our fiscal
I
year
see.
is sometimes
Okay.
a challenge, so.
I appreciate that explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's and I think also, does the changing from the 12 to the 13 month and then back to the 12 make it even different from their budget? Because they're a June to June.
Yeah, it has some impact, but the revenue was actually down. I think you were able to negotiate terms
Right.
that reflect more back to 13 than what you actually were anticipating for this year. So it really is improved over what this year's contract was. I believe from talking to Barb that that's,
Right.
yeah.
Geraldo?
Thank you for coming out, Julie, and I know it's been a long day for you. I had a brief question. The other day in your presentation that you gave, it was more an FYI, I know.
Right.
But I was sort of expecting some of that request to probably overlap into your budget as a possible request for the future, but there's nothing related to that?
Well, those items that when I came to talk about the funding for the CAC, for the Youth Assessment Center and for for CASA. None of those things are within my budget, actually. So CASA, for example, isn't a county department. So they'd have to come and ask for something separate. The Youth Assessment Center is funded by quarter-cent sales tax money, and so that might be something we might come to you later on. But none of those things are within my actual state's attorney's office budget or any of the budgets I'm directly responsible for. The CAC, the Children's Advocacy Center budget, you hear from on Thursday?
No, it was
Or
presented
you heard
last
from
night.
yesterday? Okay, and in that budget, I think, sorry I wasn't here, but I assume that Adelaide told you that there were a number of very positive things that we learned as far as the funding from the university that goes through the United Way is much more stable than we had thought it was going to be, and some of the grants that we have were increased in a way that made us feel that we didn't need to come immediately on that funding issue, but we might come back to you later.
So that all will be part of the quarter-cent tax budget, or no? Like love and limits that you sort of run as well?
That is, the Parenting with Love and Limits program is funded through the Mental Health Board and through quarter-cent sales tax, youth delinquency prevention funds. And I have a role in that, but it's not in my state's attorney's office budget.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions for Julia? All right. Place on file, please. Motion. Stan. Second, John. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Julia.
You're welcome.
I hope you brought an umbrella.
Yeah. It hasn't started yet, but.
Okay. I think last but not least, Administrative Services.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask if you all would be willing to have these budgets presented tomorrow night so that we could be done tonight. It just means you have to bring your book back, but particularly one of these budgets ties closely with looking at public safety sales tax and capital asset replacement fund, which you will be doing tomorrow night.
I so approve. I make a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. Aaron. All in favor? Aye. Let's go home.